Mr. Ty Vaught. Ty Vaught was formerly in community development and most recently in the child support department as the business manager. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration, trust, and wealth management, and his master's degree in business administration, and he's planning on pursuing his master's in public administration. And so he joined us this week, starting Monday, from child support, and just wanted to take a moment to introduce him. And on behalf of the management team, we are greatly appreciative of him joining our team.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one change on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
If I could ask this. And so, as many of you know, we have with us Trent Merritt, the Senior Vice President of Spectra, and I actually asked him to be here today. He has a flight out of Fayetteville at 3 o'clock in order to be back in place in his hometown tomorrow for business. And so I would respectfully ask that we move items 4A and 4B up on the agenda immediately after approval of the minutes to accommodate his flight.
4A and B.
Yes, sir.
To what around?
Immediately under the minutes, right before we begin our presentations.
Okay, is there a motion? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
How much money are you?
Okay, yes, Madam Manager.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, that brings us to approval of the minutes.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Okay. Madam Manager, you ready?
Yes, sir. So we're going to consider items 4A and 4B. And the first one is the amendment to the Spectra Venue Management Agreement. And I'm going to ask Mr. Merritt to walk through that, but I do have a correction. I have an error in my memo. So I want to correct that. In my memo, I stated that there was an increase in the base fee, and that's incorrect. In the original agreement, the base fee was $96,000, but it increased each year by the Consumer Price Index. The last couple of years, the last year it was about $101,000. In this potential or proposed contract extension, they're actually resetting the base fee back to $99,000. And so it would actually be a reduction in the management fee. So that is my error, and I want to correct that. Mr. Merritt, would you like to get up?
One real quick one, and but it'll start back again, the CPI.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, just
Yes, sir.
don't make sure you don't get shortchanged here.
Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to this board, and I do greatly appreciate the accommodation for moving this agenda item. Scheduling flights these days can be a challenge, so I do greatly appreciate that. Thank you. I also greatly appreciate your time today. I know that your time is valuable, and so I will be brief and to the point. Before I get into the amendment, I do just want to first acknowledge that normally I would be joined here today by our General Manager, Jim Grafstrom, as well as our Assistant General Manager, Seth Benall. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, neither of them were able to be in attendance at this meeting today. They do send their regards and appreciation to this board for all of the support and guidance, so I did want to mention that. The reason I'm here today, as the county manager outlined, is that we have proposed an amendment to our existing management agreement. The current management agreement is set to expire on June 30th of 2022. So with that said, we wanted to be proactive. There's about 8 months and change left, and we wanted to present an amendment for the purpose of extending that agreement, as well as proposing some additional financial investment from Spectra to Cumberland County. And so what I'd like to do very briefly is just kind of give you a quick overview of the material changes, there aren't many, to that amendment, and just kind of explain what they are. And then I'll turn it over, back over to the chairman and the board for any questions or comments. So as I mentioned, the current agreement does include, the current agreement expires June 30th of 2022. It already includes a 5-year option that, at the county's discretion, that would extend that contract for another 5 years through June of 2032 with the same terms and language. What we have proposed is to, in the amendment, is to formally activate that 5-year extension, again, from a continuity standpoint, from a management and personnel standpoint, we felt was very important to do that. In addition to formally activating that 5-year extension, there would be an additional 5 years, again, at the county's discretion, that would go from 27 to 2032. In addition to that change on the term, as the county manager outlined, we're actually keeping all fee structures the same with the exception of slightly reducing the base management fee. In addition, we are proposing to invest another $300,000 from Spectra in terms of capital investment to Cumberland County and the Crown Complex. And to be clear, that is not a loan or a grant that we are seeking repayment or charging interest on. It is a formal capital investment as we've done in the past. Lastly, really the only other item of kind of significance that would change in the amendment is we felt that it was important, given the potential likelihood of a new facility or replacement facility of the Crown Arena and Crown Theater, which I believe, as this group knows, is currently scheduled to close November of 2025. We did simply include some language that would give an option to renegotiate that deal should a new or replacement facility be built by the county. And so with that said, those are the changes. And really in closing, I would just say that from a professional level, our company is extremely proud of the relationship we've had here since 2013. From a personal level, I am not only extremely proud of that, but I'm very excited at the future opportunities we have. So with that said, again, I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there any questions or comments that need to be done at this time, need to be said at this time? Yes.
Since I didn't see any other hands go up, not even Mr. Keys, I would move that we approve the amendment to the Spectra venue management agreement as presented and with the modification by our county manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there's another presentation that you could have done.
Can I just be specific, Commissioner Booth, your action, can you give the date? Is this one through 2027 or the additional extension?
I thought it was for the additional extension.
I just want to be clear for the minutes, I apologize.
Yeah, so just to
Because I
clarify,
heard you were saying that you wanted to activate the 5 and then have the new contract be a new 5, not just you could just activate 5. You wouldn't be getting anything. So you need to activate the 5 and get the new contract for the additional 5.
we would, yes, the proposed amendment is to activate a 5-year term, which would go from 2022 to 2027.
Right.
And then additionally, there would be another 5-year option at the county's discretion. Yes, that's
That
correct.
was my motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Manager, is there another item that Mr. Mayor will be presenting at this time, or is that it?
Actually, I'll be, not this item, the next item I'll be presenting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And so, Commissioners, this item, the next item is the Crown Complex Multipurpose Market and feasibility study next steps. As you know, there was a public presentation on September 15th regarding the study results for a performing arts center. And so in your packet, I've listed, I won't go through it, but I've listed some of the key findings of that study. And then at the end of the presentation, at that public presentation, there were next steps listed. And the first next step was to secure project funding, and then following that, the option to hire owner's representation. Since the public presentation, our finance director, Vicki Evans, has reached out to our financial advisor, DEC Associates, and shared the presentation with DEC. As you know, we already have a performing arts center or some type of venue plugged into our capital planning model. The feasibility study provides additional financial analysis that we need to incorporate into our capital planning model if the board should desire to move forward. As a part of the due diligence from staff perspective, we started that process. And so today, I wanted to seek the board's interest in moving forward. And my recommendation is, if the board is interested in moving forward, that we formalize that due diligence, financial due diligence, with our financial advisor, have him come back and present the capital planning model, what that looks like with the findings, and if the board does have a desire to move forward, staff is willing to prepare that request for proposal for the owner's agent, to bring that agent on early on to assist the board in those next key steps.
Okay, are there any questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Bruce?
Yeah, I know there's a job that everybody has somewhere. Is there somebody that does this? I mean, are you familiar with folks that okay, do you have his little list of people that are already doing this?
He has sent me some information. Yes, sir.
I should have known that. Okay. I just, before he gets on the plane, you go like, who's done this before? Or you've opened up other, okay.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Key.
Madam Manager, this may be for Vicki. What do we have in the capital fund right now allocated for this venue?
It was 50 million.
Okay, we already had that in the kind of the holding cell. It's a placeholder.
It was yes, it's a placeholder that had the debt issuance in 23. This one is 80 million in 24.
Okay.
But we did not have any of the additional operating costs that could be incurred as a result of the new center, and so we're working on that as well.
Well, I had the opportunity to attend the results of the feasibility study, and it was pretty exciting. And I think, personally, Mr. Chair, I think that with all the ARP and contracting and everything, this venue opening date is really tight to the date that we're going to have to close the other ones. So sooner is better if we can find consensus with the board.
Okay. Just for a matter of record again, the closing date of the other venue is when? The proposed closing date?
December 31st, 2025.
I think it's November.
November
2025.
2025.
That's where they have the opening of the venue scheduled as November 25th.
Opening for the proposed
Yeah, so
new venue.
it's right,
Okay.
right up next to each other.
But that would be excellent piece happening if we can go ahead and get that done. Okay, Commissioner Bruce.
Thank you, sir. Other than you, Vicki, and whoever else is going to do this, gathering it, is there a need to bring it back in front of us since it's already been set aside twice? Or, I mean, how about if it doesn't exceed those anticipated figures or something. I mean, I agree, just to follow, to put it, like if you know on a Monday, but our next meeting is until 2 weeks later, that's 2 weeks, we could have said, oh, that's within what we all anticipated.
So the board, as a placeholder, it's at 50 million. This amount is 80 million, so the board will need to take affirmative action in modifying the capital investment fund and the planning model. So staff cannot modify, make those modifications. And so my hope would be is that we could come back in the November agenda session if possible.
Okay, and one more thing, Madam Manager,
Yes, sir.
if you could explain for us, for the listening audience, this is, we're doing this, we're considering building this venue because there's a need,
Yes, sir.
not because there's a desire to have it, because there's a need. Might be a desire somewhere in there too, but mainly because there's a need.
Yes, sir. Actually, as the board will recall, this is a replacement facility. We went through extensive study several years ago and found that the theater and the arena were not ADA compatible. And the cost to make it ADA accessible was over $60 million. And so this is a replacement venue, and the feasibility study, as you may recall, there were community forums, there was a survey, and the study actually came back with positive feedback from the community about a replacement facility.
Okay, thank you, Madam Manager. Just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that this is not money that, or finances that we're looking at just to build something that we think that we want, and it's something that we need. Okay, is there any other comments or questions?
We gotta get a clarification. So today, what you're asking for is, you're gonna be bringing back financing options or opportunities, and you're asking to be able to have an RFP for a owner's rep, and you would come back to us for the actual approval of moving forward.
So what I'm asking today is, what are the board's desires about moving forward with this multi-purpose facility? The board collectively has not had any discussion since the study was presented in public September 15th. And so I wanted to be prepared today and offer what management believes the next steps are. One, that financial due diligence, and two, to hire an owner's rep. And the step two would be management preparing a request for proposal to bring back to the board at the November agenda session. So I'm seeking guidance. How does the board want to move forward?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Adams.
I would say cautiously. I would not sit here today and say move forward without having the financials as to what it impacts in terms of all of the rest of that capital improvement project, where the money moves from, because there are other items in there. So it would be my desire to get that back before I would vote yea or nay in terms of that. Probably in favor of it, but I don't think that in terms of making a decision not knowing financial is appropriate at any time. That's just me.
And I think that's exactly what she's saying is, we're not gonna take a vote on doing something today. They need to go get the next step, the next bit of information, bring it back to us and say, here's what it would cost if we do this. And that's what we tell her.
There was the second step to that, which was to hire a project manager, and that was what was said. And so that's the part, I got the finance part, if you're gonna bring all of that back, but it was the thing that came out that I heard, and maybe I misunderstood what Madam Manager was trying to convey. Maybe that's the next step after you bring back the financials, but it was all in one package that today she was looking for guidance on financials and hiring a project manager and moving toward a proposal.
So I'm sorry I wasn't clear. What I intended to say was to have DEC and Associates come at the November agenda session, and staff would bring back a draft request for proposal, and to do that in tandem together. And both of those would have to be approved by the board.
Along with the financial.
Yes, sir.
Okay, one thing, Madam Manager, let me ask you this, and if I'm mistaken, please correct me. But the first thing that you said was about a conversation on whether or not to proceed forward with building this facility, right?
Well, I think that's a key component. So if the board says, yes, work with a financial advisor, do the due diligence, yes, work on an RFQ and bring that back in November, I take that you want to move forward.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner,
And that's my motion, what she just said.
okay. Well, would you like to repeat that motion? Would you like to repeat?
I'll second it to get it on the floor. I think he wants to discuss it.
Okay, wait a minute, hold on. Hold on, let's have a repeat of that motion that was made that Commissioner Council presented to us.
Okay, I'm not used to making motions, but let me give this a try.
Well, no, just tell Commissioner Council what it is so that she can make it.
So Commissioner Council, what I just said was to ask DEC and Associates to come back at our November agenda session with a revision to the capital planning model, that financial due diligence, and have staff bring a draft request for proposal to present to the Board of Commissioners at the November agenda session. That's what I see.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I said.
Good discussion.
Because we've been playing with this lawsuit for a long time.
Yes.
Okay, and I would ask just for the RFP to go out. If an RFP goes out and we decide to do nothing with it, it's not a contract.
Right.
All right? So there's no reason for the manager, I believe, to wait for 30 days to come to have us, none of us have ever hired an owner-manager to do this. There are people that are, but if she could go ahead with the RFP, maybe she could present some people that responded at least to the RFP. Michael, please.
Yeah, I'm pressing the button so I get in after you.
Okay, but I'm going to say, what we're doing is we're delaying, the RFP is an RFP. For us to approve it, it's just 30 days out. We're not committing anybody to anything, but simply sending out an RFP for other people to see if there is interest. We may find out that she comes in November and she sends out the RFP and there's not a lot of interest in it, and it's January or December, February before we might even hear back from them again. So I don't see the need to have the manager come back to us to approve an RFP. Personally, for me, I wouldn't know what I was looking at.
Commissioner Booth.
I appreciate sitting next to Mr. Adams all these years, and he's getting more conservative fiscally than I am, and wanting to know what the money is before we commit to projects. Well, I'm so proud. Thank you. But I was considering the cost of the owner's rep to be a cost of the project too. I don't know anybody, any of these people do this voluntarily? Any of these people are, no, oh, that's what I thought. So that's what I'm saying. So I wanted to know what it was gonna cost. Much like Mr. Keith said, if the building's gonna cost us $62,500 and they want 15 to go watch it for us, then that puts me out of ballpark as far as an owner's rep or something. So I was approving this council's motion of the summary by our county manager that at the next meeting, we'll have an RFP that ABC Delta, the company, is willing to do this. They've done 4 other projects for this amount, for this size building, venue and stuff. And here's what it's going to do and how it's going to affect the capital improvement model. And then we have everything in front of us to make a decision on how to spend.
That's different.
What to spend.
That's different.
That's it, I mean,
Well, no,
I'm just lost. I'm just lost. I just don't understand. I guess I missed the financial parts of it. But that's okay. I mean, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I do want to clarify this.
Yes, Madam Manager.
I said bring back what the RFP is what you send out to vendors for the scope of service. it lays out what the expectations are. And so that's what I was bringing back.
Because I'm with you, I don't know how you do a request for proposal without knowing the financials. So I thought the motion that you wanted was do these financials based upon whatever staff looks at, you would probably do some kind of request for proposal for us to do. But that's not the motion that's on the floor, but that's what I thought it was, so, I don't know.
That was the motion I gave
Yeah, that was
council.
the floor.
That was the motion.
We requested RFP. Have that done as well.
To bring you a draft, to review and make sure you agree with the scope of services before it's sent out anywhere.
Okay. So we had the motion, we had the second, now it's ready for the vote. All in favor?
Voting in favor, Commissioners Lancaster, Townsend, Keith, Evans, Booth, and Stewart. Voting in opposition, Commissioner Adams. The motion passes, but it was not unanimous.
So this will go to the full board.
As an item of business.
Okay, Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. We'll go back up to item number 3 and begin the presentations. 3A is the Cumberland County Schools Multi-Year Capital Improvement Plan. Today, we have with us Judge Zormo with the school system. Joe serves as the Associate Superintendent of Auxiliary Services.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity to come in front of you and talk to you about a process we've been using and to develop a multi-year capital improvement plan. There is unfortunately, a lot of numbers, a small print on here. I think you all do have copies. I will ask if you can hold your questions to the end. I will try to get through this efficiently and be able to answer as many questions as I can. To start with that, as we all know, today, there are enough distractions to learning for our students every day. We don't want facilities to be one. But you remember the DPI 5-year survey I presented to you at the end of last year identified a large need for facility repairs in Cumberland County. So I want to talk to you about a plan we put together using that information. Just a reminder, we did an assessment. That assessment covered 9 different categories of types of facility issues. The 43 different systems were covered. Every school campus was assessed in the district. It was basically based on the replacement date. We identified the replacement date for every one of those systems to let us know when they will reach the end of their life expectancy. There were over 12,000 systems identified in that assessment, and 7,500 of those are already exceeding their end of life, recommended life. That equates to about $250 million of systems that are already at the end of their life. And it also reflects an annual need of about $25 million a year just to replace systems as they come due to the end of their life. Now, resources are not available to do everything. So how do we decide on schools to target first? We've established a priority system that you see here. First of all, there's a facility condition index calculated using that assessment information that was provided. It basically takes those life cycle needs for each school and divides it by the school's replacement cost. We get a percentage from that that helps us rank the schools comparing them to each other. And that index is ranked, the ranking of all the schools are ranked, and that is given a weighted factor of 70%. On top of that, we add a weighted factor for utilization. That's basically looking at any school that is overcrowded or under-enrolled, with the expectation that if additional work is done at that school, we could improve that. We could attract more people to that school, or we provide more classroom space at that school in order to handle the overcrowding. And then the third category is performance. This is academic performance. It's based on the annual performance composite for each school. So all the schools are ranked together based on their academic performance. Again, the intent here is that maybe improvements, facility improvements can be done that would help improve on the teaching and learning environment at that school. Now, when I'm talking about life cycle needs, that is basically just identifying one system that's out there, air conditioner or whatever, and identifying that it needs to be replaced. It is not a total look at the entire program or renovating the school. So there are other factors that play into that. But using those priorities, what you see here are all the schools. This is just one page of it. I didn't provide all 80-some schools, but this is the top part of that list. Ranked using that priority, it shows you the different schools in the ranked order at this time. Now, when you look at this, and you look at the need that is identified at these schools, at least half of these schools could all fight to be justified as a number one priority. We cannot expect to catch up in just a few years. This plan that we're talking about is a plan of trying to stay even. And basically, in the long run, if you're able to stay even every year, you will start to catch up. Right? We want to plan and see what it would take to stay there on a per year cost. Now this is a nationwide trend, you see it everywhere, and we want to try to find the best way to try to use taxpayers' dollars in the best way to get some of this done. Now you see the list again, but it's a little bit bigger. What I want to say here is we need to narrow the list down to which ones we would target first in our first few years of a multi-year plan. So what we looked at was we based everything on a 40-year life of school. It would be good if we could renew and renovate our schools within that 40-year life period. So what you see here, if you take that 40 years and you try to figure out what you want to do each year, you take the total square footage, that means we need to touch about 200,000 square feet a year just to stay on a 40-year cycle. 200,000 square feet per year. So what we did was we started down this list and started totaling up the square footage for each one, and as you see by year, we reached 200,000, and by FY23, these schools fall into that time frame, and then the list goes on down, and you see that's basically how we came up with the list of schools, and then that was narrowed down to 17. Now, we need another layer of detail. Remember, the life cycle assessment was system-oriented. It was not facility-oriented. It would be nice to have a consultant do a master plan of each of these schools, but that is not realistic at this time. But what there is out there is we took advantage of a costing model that is based on over $2 billion in school construction costs. Now I want to take you quickly through it, just to show you what that model does. What you see here is the first page, or first slide. This thing is about 90 lines long, but the focus really is, when you look at it, is up at the top. For each school, we went, in these 17 schools, we visited those schools, and we did an assessment of whether we thought the work that needed to be done was minor, moderate, or major. And as we walked through the school, we identified the square footage accordingly. This is a practice that is used in this model. It helps put a cost factor. It helps you do an estimate of the potential cost of the project. On top of that, we identified any new square footage that needed to be added. Maybe there was a program shortfall, so some square footage needed to be added. And then what we have here is some cost factors that we got from DPI that show us a cost for a total school of $250 per square foot. But if you're talking about a particular item, like a cafeteria to work or something like that, it would have a different cost factor. And that's why you see 306 right there as a cost factor for that particular program space that was identified for this school. Now you go down to different parts of the total project. If you're going to go in and do some renovation, there's always some demolition to start with. These are cost factors that have come from, like I said, $2 billion worth of construction. It helps put a cost factor against a lot of these things. You have the renovation when you come back in. It is a percentage of that new school cost up there. is what they have seen over average that it would take to do either a minor, a moderate, or a major renovation. You see the cost for that addition, you see a total construction cost. The site down here you see is blank, that's because the last item on this, the last few lines on this thing kind of cover all the site stuff that are included in these cost factors. We go on down, you got phasing, you got to phase a project if it's big, if there's a complexity to the project, it has its own factor. The size of the project, as you know, if it's a smaller one, you don't get the benefit of quantities, so there's a cost factor that goes with that. If there's asbestos or lead paint identified, that's been identified. There's a cost to design a project. There's always a contingency, additional soft costs. If we have to move students around, there's a cost to move them in order to free up the space while we go in and do renovations. There's a cost for that swing space. If you go in and do a major renovation for school, you're going to have some furniture replacement, child nutrition, equipment replacement, technology. And then down here at the bottom, that item I was talking about, where a lot of that site work shows up, these are the items that aren't included in those cost factors above, but would need to be done at the site. It could be playground work, it could be roofing, or it could be parking, something like that. So those are cost factors done for every one of these 17 schools, and we end up with a total amount right there. So then, after we've done all that, we now have a more detailed estimate for each of the 17 projects. So we go back, and I would say again, that this schedule is dictated by the priorities you saw earlier and the square footage. So all the projects were ranked in a priority order, and then we tried to cover about 200,000 square feet per year. And this is how it laid out over a 5-year time frame. There is no swing space included in this, and that would impact the schedule and some other things, but this is just like a first draft. This is an evolution process we're going through here. The life cycle at the very bottom is this first line item here. I told you earlier, the annual average would be about 25 million, but because we're doing all this work above, that reduces that annual, and we've reflected that. Now there's the other life cycle work that needs to happen also. This is around 14 million instead of the 25 million, and able to stay even with the systems in the different schools. The next two items are furniture, equipment, vehicles. Those reflect the same dollar amounts that are being spent right now. That has not been changed for the purpose of this plan. You get a yearly total at the bottom. And what I want to point out here is that this turns out over this time period to touch approximately 17 schools at this dollar amount spread out over 5 years. Now, I want to go back up and point out, J.W. Coon and Sherwood Park on this list. They're small, they're underutilized, and they're just down the road from each other. All right? Together, they will add up to $39.5 million in just renovation costs. What will that money provide? It provides you new efficient systems, but many of the same space and learning environment restrictions are still there because you haven't added, torn down walls or anything like that, per se. So those restrictions are still there. If you have a low ceiling, low roof building, and you can't put HVAC up above or run a duct system, you still won't be able to with these costs, all right? So are there any other, so when we saw that, and we saw the cost for those two schools just down the road from each other, which are both being underutilized, we start talking about consolidation and the impact that that could potentially have on this plan. A reminder, when you go back to the DPI information, this is what it costs for a new school under the standards and the assumptions that have been approved by our board. The capacity of 700 for elementary, capacity of 800 for middle, and capacity of 1,600 for high school. And you see what the estimated cost is. And you will notice for elementary, a new school could be built for approximately $33.6 million. Well ago, I told you that Coon and Sherwood Park together are over $39 million just for renovations, and you do not get a state-of-the-art school out of that. What does combined schools do for you? First of all, it reduces personnel and operating costs. Example, you only have one versus two principals, all right? You only have one cafeteria staff instead of two. You only have one cafeteria instead of two. So there's a potential savings there. There's unearned allotment costs that are spent by the school system for smaller schools. They don't earn the total allotment that would give you all the personnel you need to operate that school, so additional costs have to be added on in order to pay for that, to help operate that smaller school. You get a repurpose value out of the space that you free up, whether it's you use it for another purpose that's good for the system, or whether you sell that property in surplus, all right? You get improved safety and security. As you remember, a lot of our schools are multiple buildings, you have to travel between buildings, they're open and unsafe, and we put these nice, pretty fences around them, all right? We get to operate a new efficient versus inefficient system, so there's a saving there. And you get a 21st century learning environment out of it also. So how many other schools could we possibly consolidate? Well, this is the next evolution. Staff identified several potential pairings, and if you look on this list, you'll see now what the name of the school is. If you see two schools, that is the potential pairing that we're talking about, that those two schools could be consolidated together into one. Most of what we found, at least one of the schools was already in the top 17 schools, priority-wise. So we're already touching those schools. At least one out of each of the pair of schools potentially has enough acreage on its site for a new school. Now, if you look real closely, the order has changed on which projects happen first. And that is due to the need to incorporate some potential swing space. You have to move students out of the school in order to tear it down and build a new one. And you've got to arrange that swing space, so that kind of changes the order, and we've done some preliminary looking at what that swing space could take to do that. You will have other potential order changes that could result from a community support strategy or political input. Now, what is the cost and the facility impact by taking this approach? Some of the original 17 schools are pushed out to the future. You'll notice here, these are lower dollar amounts of design dollars. Originally, the construction dollars for these schools was included in that original plan. It's been pushed out now another year in order to do these newer schools, these consolidations up above. What is the impact? We now have an impact on 18 schools and only an additional cost of $13 million to the total plan. We do push out one or more renovations, or we could push out another renovation and the price would actually be less than the original plan, all right? But what you get out of this is 6 new 21st century schools at a capacity of 700 students for elementary and a larger capacity. Now, I know one question I get asked a lot is about a couple of schools on Skyboat. All right?
That's on my list right there. I'm glad you went there.
Well, we did look at that, but right now, looking at the priorities and looking at the use of those buildings and the availability of space, and Chestnut Middle and Lewis Chapel, they're lower down on the priority list, and their membership is too large to combine or relocate under the current plan. So they would not be added to the list at this time because of that. Now, there's also another school that's been in discussion that you don't see on this list anywhere. E.E. Smith has not been included in the 2 plans so far. So back to other reasons that you may change the order of your projects on the project list, and that is because of the potential unique funding coming from another source. If there's ever an opportunity to provide additional funding or get additional funding from another source, you often look at rearranging your schedule in order to incorporate that cost in there and saving the district and the county some money that they would otherwise have had to put forth. So the next and last evolution of the plan I will show you today is this one. It now has E.E. Smith. And there's actually a year added to the beginning of this plan just because of the potential timing of E.E. Smith starting earlier. So that year is added to begin. Again, the plan assumes some funding from outside sources. partially for the school and totally for the potential that an aquatic center could be included in that partnership or that plan also. What does this plan show you? It shows you 18 schools impacted with 7 new schools at a cost, depending on the unique funding that comes in, at an additional cost somewhere between $37 to $85 million. And Southview Middle School now moves out a year when it comes to construction. I also want to just mention right now, just for notification, the red schools up here are what we call the low-performing schools, the PACE schools. That we just wanted to highlight how many of those schools, as you remember, under priorities, one of the things was the performance composite. How many of those schools that would be touched in this plan too? So, we have presented this, we've talked to staff on this, and we talked about potential next steps, and that's what I have listed here. There is a request to the county, if they could, county staff, if they could come and do a presentation to our board of education on debt capacity, so they can have a better understanding of how that works, and what that capacity is for the county. If we continue to proceed forward with this, the county could look at doing some potential debt capacity scenarios to include some kind of level of funding for our school work. And then, based on that information, the district would begin looking at this list and adjusting it as needed. And then eventually provide an official need to the county of what is out there that needs to be done when it comes to renovations to schools. We would like to start doing that on a yearly basis, providing that official need to the commissioners. And with that, that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments?
I just got a
Commissioner Adams.
couple. And I just saw, and I saw on there it had Ashley and Glendale. So as we do this, I see all the payout, but for instance, and you may repurpose it, but what Ashley sits says that with one that we may put on the market and then you get revenue from. Because it sits right on Skybow. It is as probably a valuable piece of property. 4 people probably come by right next door to it. But even as we look at some of those schools, I would ask that, and I know you don't know what you may do with these schools, but though that might be something that's in the equation, especially when you're talking about the Ashley School, right, sitting right there on Skybow, which is a huge piece of property, because I saw it was Ashley and Glendale property. I don't know if you go one to the other or whatever. The other, not Ashley, it's not Ashley, I'm thinking of what you call it on Skybow. Albany Wilkins, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Albany Wilkins. As you move these schools, as you move these schools, is to move that school and sell that piece of property. That would be, because that school, and not that, thank you, Larry, my mind gets to moving too fast at that. But in terms of if we combine some of these other schools, which would leave some facilities open, that would be to generate some revenue. The other question, and you're a facilities guy, so I'm just throwing it out, so maybe they'll bring it back to us, because that would be the board and Dr. Conley, so I ain't gonna put you on the spot. But in terms of redrawing some lines, in terms of maybe consolidating and moving some other schools, that would be one of the things that I would think we ought to at least explore, whether it happens or not. You might be able to explore that. And that one, the third one, Mr. Keith, Mr. Chairman.
If I may, just real quickly, I'll just go back on what you just said, Commissioner Adams, is that those consolidations, I mentioned the possibility of bringing another function in there. Another function I did mention that could help during this plan is that some of these spaces, once we consolidate, free up a school, that school could become a swing space for another renovation for another school. And if they're spread out in the right locations, potentially it could be used for that. But there's always a next plan after that for what to do with it.
Thank you. Commissioner Key.
I'm not sure where to start. But, I'll start easy. You got a number of schools here that have very much square footage, and the Hillsborough School for Performing Arts, which I noticed has some success, but it's very square footage wise. And what we don't know is how many students they actually, from your graphic, how many students they actually handle at each of these schools.
Okay, the two you just mentioned, Hillsborough and Fuller, are not being used for students.
Okay.
Okay, they're being used for,
Is that what they're not?
in fact, yes, right. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll notice that out of the criteria, they don't have a performance composite, or they don't have utilization
Okay.
ranking.
I like your consolidation. You kind of stepped right over the Lewis Chapel and we talked about why, but, I mean, Manchester's a 70-year-old school. Lewis Chapel is close behind it. It's on a 7-lane, highest commercial lot thoroughfare in all of Cumberland County. And it's two middle schools across the street from each other. It seems like there should be some sort of creative thinking, not only with the value of the property, of relocation, and possibly it doesn't have to be in that exact area, but a nicer school for both of those, for all of those students. They go, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had to drive down Scarborough Road during morning traffic. It's not safe. But, you know, it's really not safe for the buses, for the traffic, for everybody else. There's just so many reasons why it seems to me that we should take a hard look at that location. As Commissioner Adams ended up getting right. Tokens being right down the street from it again. You know, we're taking premium property that can have a high value of being able to invest back into the school system. You know, we got lots of different consolidations here, and I just can't believe that one didn't even really make the top of it.
If I may just remind you that what was one of the big drivers for this was the facility condition index and the ranking that those schools came in at from a facility perspective. And the ones you were mentioned, as I also said earlier, I could try to justify half of the schools in the district to be the number one. They do not fall in when we do this ranking near the top.
They're in better shape, you see.
They're in better shape. They're in better shape.
But they're in better shape because there's been consistent renovation and going to them. We've been investing in those two schools for many, many years.
This plan tries to get the biggest bang for the buck. And these are the schools identified here, is you're getting more schools touched for this amount of money than you would be if you tried to start touching.
Well, are we getting more students touched?
Yes, I believe you are.
A lot of them are elementary schools.
That is true.
Yeah. I do have a little bit of concern about the Stedman primary, the Stedman elementary, and the Beaver Dam.
That's, I knew that.
You can do way down there.
Yeah, that's like a different time zone.
We agree. I think that is something that will have a lot of future discussion.
Probably faster than I can get the feedback.
But even if we take Beaver Dam out of it, it's still a consolidation that works under the plan.
You know, aside, you know, if you really break it down, Joe, aside from the E.E. Smith School and I believe I saw a middle school in that Southview Middle, they're all elementary schools.
Yes, sir.
And we were just talking, you know, almost every high school in this town is over 50 years old. Almost every one of them. Like we got a couple of them. Grace Creek, maybe, that's 79.
Quick question, what's the ultimate decision, or had the school made a decision on Teresa C. Berry?
The district is in the process of going through the approval process to close the school.
Close the school, and so that, the students that was located at Teresa Berry, which is now out with W.T. Brown?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so would they remain there, or?
No, sir, but the district is also in the process of starting on student reassignment plan.
Okay.
And the main goal in there is to take care of the T.C. Barron students and to reassign them to schools closer to their homes.
Okay, fantastic. Are there any other comments or questions at this time as to, if not, Madam Manager, you could assist with this, which direction do we go now?
So I think the potential next steps, Mr. DeZormo laid those out. I think the Board of Education has asked that County Finance and Management do a presentation on our debt capacity at some point in the future. and then with that information, take some of the information that Joe's put together and run some scenarios based on our debt capacity, and then put all that together, and the Board of Education will consider that, and then come back with an official ask. I believe that's what I heard.
Official identification of the need.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. If there's not any more questions or comments, thank you, sir. Thank you. Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask the board for another, moving something around on the agenda. Could we move item 3C up now? I'm pleased to have our hospital CEO, Mr. Mike Nagowski, and Brian Pierce with us today. Dr. Stewart and I and Sally Shutt had a meeting with Mr. Nagowski last week about a potential community paramedic program. And so in the interest of Mr. Nagowski's time and busy schedule, this might be the quietest one he has all day, but I would ask if we could we move that up? We have Ann Oshel with Alliance Health that's going to present. She's going to present what the programs look like in Wake, Durham, and Johnston County. And you may recall, when we brought forward, Dr. Stewart did, the paramedic program in Buncombe County. So if the board's okay with that, then we'll move forward with Ann Oshel and her presentation.
As long as you help me remember what the
Where we
changes are made.
Yes, I will.
No problem at all.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Ann. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to the day that we can all sit in the same room, because I am learning on kind of doing a presentation virtually. I can either see my screen and nobody else, or I see everybody but not my screen. So if there are questions, somebody may need to alert me since I can't see you all right now. I'm Ann Oshel, the Senior Vice President of Community Health and Wellbeing with Alliance Health, and wanted to give you kind of a quick update on our approach to community paramedicine. You know, what I will say about kind of using medics as part of a crisis continuum to respond to those that are having a psychiatric crisis. There are a lot of different models, there are a lot of different options, and I don't think that there is a right one or a wrong one. I think it is figuring out what's the best fit for our community need. And so this is kind of how we've approached it for the last several years in partnership with EMS. And let me see if I can now move my screen. There we go. So we have contracted with Durham, Wake, and Johnston EMS since 2015. This program started originally with some federal block grant dollars out of the state that began this program for a couple of years. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, the federal block grant requirements for EMS changed, making it a lot more cumbersome and burdensome to invoice us for this program. And so at that time, Alliance decided it was valuable to the work that we were doing, making a difference, and that we would assume the continued cost of this program through our reinvestment savings. A little of the program requirements is that medics must be certified in crisis intervention team, CIT. Cumberland has a very successful CIT program. It's been on hiatus for a little while due to COVID, but I know it is kind of underway again with some more classes. All of the response happens within a 911 call, and so our call center would not dispatch community paramedicine. It would either come through the telecommunicator who, from the call description, has a sense of whether or not this is more of a psychiatric emergency, and EMS is the most appropriate call response, or it could happen when EMS is already on the scene assessing the situation and determines themselves that this is really more psychiatric in nature than medical. Kind of the gist of the service is that EMS provides triage, assessment, on-site intervention, linkage to resources, and a disposition. And so the triage is the usual medical assessment to rule out any kind of of medical distress, the assessment of, is this a psychotic episode because somebody went off of their medication. They can also determine on site what's the best approach to take, and that's a number of options from requesting the mobile crisis team to, if the person has a provider with Alliance, to notify the provider that they are out there on that day with this person. And if they do deem that it is safe enough, even if the call out was more of a response to a suicidal thought, they can develop a safety plan. The linkage to resources is, we have kind of a special passcode protected field for all of our first responders in each county, and so they are able to go into this app and see, the list of pharmacies and food banks and whatever else somebody might need, and so EMS can certainly make a linkage to any resources. And then finally, they decide on the disposition of the call, which could be one of two options for them. We reimburse through two tiers. The first is a treat and no transport, so they were able to determine that this person would be safe and that there is a treatment plan in place and that there is no need to do any type of transport. The other reimbursement is a non-emergency transport. So it's been decided that this person needs to go to another alternative destination for further assessment. The service definition is very specific about what those approved alternative destinations would be. So they have to be non-hospital settings, such as a facility-based crisis center, a detox. In our other counties, it could be behavioral health urgent care, it could be Holly Hill Hospital, it could be healing with transitions. And so we would look in Cumberland if this was anything that you wanted to proceed on what would be an approved alternative destination for transport by EMS. The whole goal is to reduce unnecessary emergency department visits for psychiatric episodes. And I know Kate Beer is there today. They could certainly speak on what they have seen, especially as kind of COVID continues with an increased number of people who are presenting to the emergency department who could have been diverted into a treatment setting. And this is just to give you a sense of some of the data that we collect and report on. This is actually 3 years worth of data as part of the Wake EMS program. You can see steadily the numbers have responded, and when our data analyst sent me this, the first thing I said is that 272 calls a month? And yes, that is 272 calls a month. And so for us, we are excited about seeing that number because, well, it's bittersweet. One, that there are still so many people entering into our system through 911. I mean, we are always working to educate the public about alternatives to the emergency department and crisis response. And at the same time, we know that 911 is always the default when people are needing some life-saving support. So Wake is a larger county, of course, but we do average about 272 calls that EMS has coded as a community paramedic response. And then you can see kind of the breakdown of the different dispositions. And a large number, sometimes larger than we want, still requires an ED transport. And the biggest reason for that is in that triage and assessment, EMS has determined that there could still be a medical acuity that needs to be checked out. So it could be a cardiac issue, something along those lines. And so it's not necessarily because they couldn't transport to a treatment facility, it's that they still felt like that a medical screening and stabilization kind of preempted another type of transport. But as you can see, the second largest number of calls is a no transport required, where they were treated and released. They were able to make a plan for safety and treatment right there on site without any transport. And that is something that is more of the desired outcome in EMS, so that they don't get tied up in having to transport people. And then this is a little bit from Johnston County. You can see it's a smaller call volume, but still an increase over the last several years of this program. And I kind of included Wake and Johnston in this because Johnston has a very different kind of 24/7 crisis facility response. They don't have a 24/7 crisis facility to transport. They don't have detox facilities to transport. It is really just kind of in the crisis facility that has limited hours and days. And at the same time, they still have a significant call volume related to psychiatric crisis that EMS would respond to. And, the good percentage of those are still transported to the emergency department. But I will say, overall, the program is working in the ways that we want it to. We've seen, up to a 20% increase in utilization from last fiscal year. That's even been in the midst of COVID. And that while 67% of individuals are still transported to the emergency department, that means that 33% of people actually either get to stay home or go into treatment. And so even with the 67% reporting to the emergency department, we are still seeing people diverted through community paramedicine. And so it's an important part of our crisis continuum. We've had conversations over the years in Cumberland about the possibility of this program with the opening of Recovery Innovations and the plans for just kind of the continuing expansion of that program. We think community paramedicine would be, the timing would be good and the opportunity would be good to take another look at kind of the viability of this.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner Adams.
That's all right. And one of the things that, I guess a piece that would be important also to us is that as this goes out, did they, in Wake, Johnson, or Durham, and those, see the decrease in the jail and the the just constantly going back to jail, getting out, going back to jail? Does that have an impact on, it's not in the report, I didn't see. So would that not be, have they assessed that?
So that's a great question, and I'm trying to get my screen off.
Oh, we see you though.
I'm not exactly sure how to do that, so I apologize that you can still see, have a great meeting. So the jails are not considered an alternative destination into treatment. Thank you. And so that would not be included in either kind of the reimbursement options or any of the data that we collect. EMS could comment on whether or not they have transported anybody to the jail in a psychiatric crisis, but that would not be kind of included as the scope of work in this program.
No, what I guess my question would be, has anybody talked to the jail to see that the same people that come and go, because of this program, they're not seeing those people now? I mean, we can almost tell you on a continuous basis who's getting picked up and all of that. So, and that might be a good component to be able to know, because that lets you know that you're working on the mental health issue and not getting, even though it's not something that you get fee for doing that, but this program is keeping them out of the jail.
So I think, your point is well taken. I mean, I think that all these public systems that encounter people with severe mental illness or addictions, we could bolster other parts of the system and access to services that service diversion points. And so while for kind of the work that community paramedicine has done, we don't necessarily kind of tie it to people who are in and out of jail. We did participate in a familiar faces kind of data exchange in Wake County, because they were asking the very same question that you're asking is, how many and what are the names of the people that travel between Alliance, EMS, the jail, and our homeless service systems. And they did find kind of a small, and I say small being relative, but a small number of people who touched all of our systems. And if EMS wasn't responding and transporting, they were in the jail. If they weren't in the jail, they were in a psychiatric hospital. And so yes, to your point, all of these systems are connected, and when we do better bolstering kind of one intervention point, I think it benefits all.
Yeah, I just think the collection of the data, because from the data you can determine the success of whatever it is, and all the programs put together. Thank you.
Anyone questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. Now, we will have.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to thank Mr. Nagaski and Mr. Pierce for attending today. And we'll go back now to item 3B, and that is the, I'm sorry.
Is there anything that you would like to say, Mr. Nagaski?
No, nothing in particular. I want to say thank you to the commissioner, to the manager. Thank you for having us here. We've had a lot of success with community paramedic programs, more specifically on the medical side. So we're a big believer, right? We're really proud of our paramedic program. We welcome any level of collaboration with Alliance on this topic. So we appreciate you being here and letting us be here.
And we appreciate you coming, so taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. Thank you.
I think it is important, Mr. President, with the Medicaid transformation, they're all going to be linked together because it is a physical and mental health kind of thing that's going to happen. So I think it's outstanding. Thank you, Commissioner Stewart.
So after our meeting last week, one of the things that we committed to was to, with Mr. Nagaski and Mr. Pierce, Dr. Stewart and Sally and I, to make contact again with Buncombe County, the county manager, their emergency services director, to try to get a better understanding of the specifics of their program. And so we'll be coming back to the board again.
Well, that's fantastic. I think this is a worthwhile item that we need to deal with here in Cumberland County. So I'm very grateful for the presentation, for Mr. Nagaski, what he's doing, and also to Commissioner Stewart for bringing it to us. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add, as far as the law enforcement are concerned, and why Alliance wouldn't have those numbers, but definitely I think it's something that they should consider. When people are in crisis, they call the police, they don't call the paramedics. And so to give people an option in the middle of the night, as opposed to calling the police, because that's what they would do, was call the police, and so they wouldn't have those numbers. But just knowing that there's an option, knowing that we're all working together, our law enforcement, our hospital, our boards, everybody's working together to stop the rotation of going into the system and coming back out, because we know they are ultimately in need of some help mentally, and don't require them to be put in jail. And I really do hope that we can all work together for the betterment of our citizens concerning this. And again, a crisis, remember,
Happens every day.
yes, not just medical, but it could be mental, it could be homeless, and with RI coming to the forefront again, with having no wrong door, we really have an awesome opportunity to be able to come together and work together for our citizens.
Well, Commissioner Stewart, again, thank you for bringing this to the board and everyone else. Mr. Nagaski and the young lady here with Alliance, I'm sorry, I didn't.
And Ocean.
Excuse me.
And Ocean.
Ocean. Yes, this young lady here. Didn't want to mention your name, but thank you all for bringing it, because especially since we're not talking about dealing with the homeless situation and what we're doing to prepare to have a shelter here, whatever. And then even out in the community where there's mental health issues and someone mistake substance abuse or addiction for something else, and then the problem's escalated to more than what it should be. And so I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for this. Thank you so much. Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item on the agenda is 3B, compensation. Hi, Ann, thank you.
Thank you.
compensation administration assessment project, and I want to thank Dr. Wade for being patient as we move some things around. As you know, Dr. Wade started with the county as the Chief Human Resources Officer in June. And one of the things that we talked about early on was our recruitment and our retention challenges that we continue to have. So I asked Dr. Wade to take a look at our classification system and to give us some initial thoughts. And so, Dr. Wade, with that, I'll ask you to provide us some words regarding the assessment.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager, and thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and the board members for allowing me to come before you today to make this presentation. Let's start off by saying that, first of all, the county has not had a comprehensive assessment of its structure, of its pay structure, since 2018. And as a result, we don't have any 2021 data to validate our competitiveness at this time in the marketplace. Additionally, issues surface over time involving diverse topics ranging from pay compression to retention and recruitment involving the county's employees. So in order to provide current information on these topics for the board as well as for county management, HR has recommended an assessment of the county's compensation administration structure. And I am guided by the personal ordinance which states that the salary plan shall provide for the salary advancement of employees based upon changes in job responsibilities and prevailing labor and market considerations. So there are several areas of interest which I would like to raise as examples of this particular item. One of the things that I noticed coming in was that it's sometimes difficult to differentiate between the pay rates for newly hired employees who are still learning their jobs for longer tenured employees who have achieved higher levels of competence in the same jobs. An example may be that, as listed here, that we currently have a supervisor at grade 66 with 3 years of experience in his role, who is only separated by his subordinate at a grade 63 with only 11 months in his role by about $960 a year. And normally, traditional compensation administration practices advise there should be at least a difference between a subordinate and a supervisor/lead of at least 10 to 15%, because that reflects the internal value of the roles based on the qualifications required and the duties and responsibilities assigned. We can extend it a little lower into grades 55 through 61, which presently have an entry rate of $15 an hour, an annual salary of roughly $31,200. These are some examples that exist now. In the detention center, we have a cook at a grade 58, which is supervised by a cook supervisor at a grade 61. Because all of these have the same entry rate, that creates a compression challenge. Same thing for our custodians, which are at grade 55s, which are supervised by custodian crew leaders who are at grade 57. We have housekeepers at grade 55 that are supervised by a housekeeping team lead at grade 57. Outside of that, we have office and processing assistants at grade 58s and administrative support specialists at grade 60. Now, while this isn't a supervisor subordinate example, it's just an example of how compression exists between positions in our organization. So basically, there are a few things that, again, we know. Number one, our current structure can inhibit movement within the structure itself, and our present structure had benefited from market pricing for similarly situated positions affecting the county's employee attrition and retention rate. And so right now, other than COLAs, there's no program systematic monetary valuing for increasing experience or individual career development of employees. And with the exception of the sheriff's office or nursing, our structure does not have anything in place to create that valuing for our employees. And as such, that inhibits individual actions that drive a person's choice to pursue professional development, pursue certifications, etc. This was our vacancy rate as of last month, September 20th. We were right at 30% at that time. In the national average, normally that rate is around 20%. Now that results from a multitude of reasons. However, we do know that we had 340 which were voluntary resignations. Some of those were pursuing other opportunities, some of those were changes in life, but at the end of the day, it is still something worth being aware of. And so, my discussion with the manager has resulted in is a desire to do the following things: to conduct a real-time evaluation of our organizational compensation structural grades and pay ranges, to perform an organizational compensation analysis including labor market data, as well as a proposed salary structure design and implementation, to develop a compensation philosophy which drives our actions throughout all timelines inside the employee life cycle. And then finally, using this snapshot, which is basically what it is, an assessment of where we are right now, to integrate that into the development of the sustainable compensation administration system that allows us to take our organization into year 2022 and beyond. So that's basically the information I wanted to share with you today. It's a snapshot in time. This is what I think we need to have in order to inform management and to inform you as decision leaders on what the next steps might be as you deem appropriate. Subject to your comments, that concludes my presentation.
Are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Keefe.
I know this is going to be very unpopular, but a lot of the things that you talked about at the very beginning with those lower wages, they are directly as a result to this board raising the minimum wage up to $15 an hour, $31,200, are they?
I would say that some of those what I would call unintended consequences. They benefited a lot of employees, and those employees are grateful. It's simply that there are some other things that we can probably do to reduce those that impact.
Just the supervisors felt like that they should be making more. When we raised everybody up, that the unintended consequences was everybody else thought that they were more valuable too. Well, whatever. Okay. Now, in all of what's happening in the world with supply chain and labor and everything else, and we're looking at 30%, are we really looking at apples to apples when you said in an actuary of other organizations? I don't know if that was last year or 2 years ago, but are we looking at current? Because right now, everybody's at 30%. or higher. So to take that point in time and to say, hey, this is the new normal, I don't know if we're getting the best feel for it. Now, maybe you took that into consideration. But we don't know how this is going to settle down. And so if we're moving forward with all of this, our goal was to bring people up to a $15 minimum wage. And we felt like we could fund that because we asked those questions, but nobody asked the question of what is the residual fallout from that of everybody else wanting additional, can we fund that also? So those are just my comment. On your first thing, you talked about one person that was in there and one person had 3 months in, and another person, and you said, it's not really fair. Well, the guy that was making as much as the other one, he thinks it's real fair, probably. But, I mean, it's difficult. But those are my comments on that. I think a lot of this happened because we did what we believe was right, raised the lower rate.
Commissioner Adams.
Mr. Keith, I think I have to disagree with you a little bit. I know it's not, probably won't be glad. It wasn't something that we didn't anticipate, which is why at one point we were doing the year, because we knew that that would be an issue. We decided to bite the apple and do it all at one time because it was the right thing to do. But I believe that $15 an hour is not the crux of our problem. The crux of our problem is, one, we start too low, and two, there are no steps in between where you can move. You get in there and you just stuck. Everybody shaking their head, yeah. So even though we bring everybody up to 15, if these other people had already been in their category and been moving up stepwise, 15 would not have gotten these people too close to these other folks. Or it might have got them a little bit closer, but it is the fact that we start too low, which is why we have competitive problems. You know, the city just raised their police officers some more, so, you know, it gets to be a chicken and egg and what you're gonna do and all of this, but, and Mr. Wade is smiling, but if you look at our step, when you get to be in the 66, you're just stuck in the 66. And all you get is the 3%, 2% that we give you. Most places in the 66, there's a 66.1, 66.2, and 66.3. We don't have, I mean, that's kind of, you either gotta move to a 67, 68, or go, or whatever, but that's, so, I understand when you said there was some unintended consequences. I think we knew the consequences were gonna come. That was, I think that management knew that was gonna be an issue. I know we all got those calls where people like, hey, somebody's making close to me now. But I think that this board was right. You know,
I'm not disagreeing.
but let me tell you, sometimes I have to go back and give you credit for whatever, and it pains me too, but when we lowered the insurance premium, if you're making $10 an hour, you would have never been able to make, you didn't have health insurance. We can call it a benefit all you want to, but if you're making $10 an hour, you have to make the decision, do I go to the doctor because I can't get to that deductible, because the deductible was $3,000. So we can call it a benefit all day long, and I think that's why we went to the 15. A benefit ought to be a benefit, but I think we're all in agreement we did the right thing, and I think this is the right thing to do. This is going to cost, and we either bite it at one time or we do it incrementally. That's for the board to decide when he brings those numbers back. But don't be shocked by the numbers when they come back. I think those numbers are going to be.
Mr. Chair, can I agree with Mr. Glenn, I do believe it was the right thing to do. I was very supportive and endorsed that. I believe it was the right thing. I just would have liked to, we only asked the budget of that. Now, here's another thing we brought up. We do have a low, middle, and high range for every classification we have. What we don't have, and this was, I don't know if it's been here as long as I've been here, I don't know if management or commissioners, but we don't have merit. We only have cost of living. Well, you know, the problem with merit is everybody thinks you're great, you know? But
we'll not stop and talk to you at the water cooler doors.
Right, but if you only have cost of living, then someone does get into that point. So, I guess the other thing I'd ask, with all the technology out of the way, have we found other ways that we can use technology either to decrease our number of employees so we can have better benefits for the others, or are there, you know, everybody's doing things differently now. Sure. Are we going to do things differently?
Sir, that certainly will be a discussion with the manager, and based on her guidance, what I will say, sir, is that, well, in order to decide where we're going to go, we need to first know where we are. And looking at it across the board as an entire structure, I think certainly serves all your concerns well. And so that's the effort we're undertaking now.
Any more comments or questions? Mr. Wade,
Yes, sir.
first, I have one question and a comment. As far as how long would this take?
I would offer that, given as we're coming into the holidays, the fact that HR right now has a 40% vacancy rate.
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't hear you, so laughter going on.
Okay, I understand. Okay, well, again, because we're going into the holidays and because HR has a 40% vacancy rate, I would offer that, to be fair, if I would say February. Yes, sir, at the latest.
And this is in February, so we're talking about looking at adjusting these salaries or ways to adjust the salaries for the individuals that feel like their salaries, that need their salaries adjusted. And so we're looking at February to possibly have the study, or what is it called?
Well, basically, right now, this is an assessment. And an assessment is simply where we are right now, real-time look at where we are. And that will inform management as well as you all as decision makers on where we should go. So right now, this is an entry-level step in a sense. Based on the information we can surface from this will allow us to make recommendations for your consideration.
Well, thank you, and I want to say that the move that we made to raise everyone to $50 an hour, it was much needed, and I appreciate and applaud the board for taking that step and biting the bullet to have that done. And also, we need to let our staff, the individuals, not staff, but our individuals that are employees here for our Team Cumberland County know that we are working very hard to make sure that they are compensated at the way that they should be. And we're very grateful to them for what they do. Yes, Commissioner
Dr.
Stewart.
Wade, this assessment
Yes, ma'am.
also include identifying the vacant positions that we have open that we don't need open, how long they've been open, if it's really necessary, because and I'm minimizing this, but I look at it like clothes in my closet. If I haven't worn it in 2 years, I don't need it.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, I'm thinking about the money that's set aside for all these vacant positions that we have. If we don't need them, but we need money, it would seem like it would make sense that we consider if we have positions vacant that we really don't need.
Ma'am, that's an important consideration. It's a separate discussion, but related in terms of your thoughts as a board about how to fund various different things inside the organization. And so putting that here, I think that in order to even, pursue that particular line of thought, we would have to know, again, what our structure currently, what exists inside our current structure, what are the compression issues and those points that exist, whether or not we are priced competitively across all our class specifications, all our positions against the market. I think it's important to highlight the fact that the market has been constantly moving since 2012. Our structure has been static. So as a result, I would want to get a handle on, get a good idea on if there's any disparity between those before I could offer more information for your consideration.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Mr. Wade, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think that we're on item C.
Yes, sir, 4C and 4D. I'm going to ask our Public Health Director, Dr. Jennifer Green, to come forward. Item C is the Public Health Department fiscal year 2022 fee schedule changes. Welcome, Dr. Green.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
This evening or this afternoon, we have a presentation for you on, we'll start with our fee schedule. So the general statute allows us to set fees for the health department for services that have been rendered. We need approval from both the Board of Health and the county commissioners to take this action in changing our fee schedule. So we set fees based on the cost of, acquisition cost, most primarily in our fee schedule, that's for vaccines, the Medicaid rate, third-party rates, and then in addition, the cost of actually performing the services as well, and then the type of service that it is. On September the 21st, our Board of Health approved our fee schedule for the upcoming year. During the pandemic, Medicaid temporarily raised the fees that we were allowed to bill for in the health department. These temporary increases have repeatedly been extended, and now our Medicaid consultant has indicated to us that these fees the raising of those fees is pretty permanent, and that we should be setting our fees at the minimum of the Medicaid rate. The changes that we have before you today reflect that, and that we've set our fees at the Medicaid rate, at the Medicaid minimum rate. It's important to note, as we did talk about last week with our fee schedule and our flu fees, that our fees, most of them are on a sliding scale basis, and that many of our fees slide to zero, although not all of them. And so even if you are underinsured or uninsured, there is both a payment plan available for you and a sliding fee scale. So our recommendation for you today is to place this on the consent agenda item for Monday, and I'll note a few fees in particular on the fee schedule. The first is regarding our Gardasil vaccine. That is just a change in the billing code. We have a new fee for tobacco cessation that allows us to bill if we spend more time with the patient on tobacco cessation. Based on the time that we spent, we're able to bill now for that. And then there's actually one fee that's reduced in cost, and that's our rabies vaccine fee. We aligned that with Animal Services has the same fee. They reduced their fee in the budget process, and so we are aligning with that. And so I'm happy to answer any questions before we do the next agenda item.
Are there any questions or comments for Dr. Green? If not, is there a motion?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Adams says it.
No, mine was just to move to,
Okay, I'm sorry.
to approve the proposed FY 2022 Public Health Department fee schedule.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Unanimous. Item 4D. Item 4D is the Public Health Department Billing Guide Update.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the second item on the agenda for us is a billing guide update. Each year, we assess our billing guide to make sure that it is up to date in terms of Medicaid policy and procedures, and then also state laws and regulations. And so the changes that are before you today reflect changes from the State Health Department and or Medicaid, and getting our billing guide up to date. The Board of Health is also required to approve these changes, and they did so at their September the 20th. These changes will be effective October the 15th, and we do notify patients of the changes to the billing guide, subject to us giving them a phone call or paper notification and posting signage in our office about these changes and on our website. So there are a few changes. On page 8, there is a change in the county of residence requirement for WIC. There is no longer a county of residence requirement. You can be a resident of any county and be seen at our WIC office. The state has moved with our eWIC program. You can do much more of our services electronically and remotely, and so they've allowed for approval or acceptance to our program regardless of county of residence. On page 10, 11, 13, and 14, you see our full list of added plans. We've added TRICARE West and MedCost as plans that we contract with at the health department. And then on page 18, we've just added some additional income sources that we accept when we consider you for our sliding fee scale, and that is our income tax, your bank statement, and for our family planning resident, if you're a college student or you can provide proof that you're enrolled, then we will can take that into consideration as well, and you can self-declare your income. Our recommendation to the board is to place this item on the October the 18th consent agenda.
Okay, are there any questions or comments for Dr. Green? If not, is there a motion?
I move that we place this schedule on the upcoming October 18th board.
Is there a second?
On the consent agenda, second.
All in favor?
That is unanimous.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, item
Yes, ma'am.
4E is a request from Famit's Transport, Inc. for increase in trip rate for community transportation. Today we have with us our Planning and Inspections Director, Mr. Ross Howard, and also our MPO Director, Hank Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The item that you have before you is a request from one of our transportation providers to increase the trip rate that we currently charge for our services through the Community Transportation Program. Just to give you a little bit of background for those of you that don't know, our Community Transportation Program is essentially a contracted service that is funded through state and federal grants processes. Currently, we have two providers in the county. We have B&W Transportation, and we have FAMEX. The written request letter should be in your packet, so you should have that. So just to give you a little bit of background for those of you that weren't here, I think the majority of you were here at the time in FY21 budget discussion. FAMEX had requested $25.50 as the rate at that particular time. At the board's request, the board had requested that we go back to FAMEX and to ask them if they could make their rate comparable to B&W at that particular point, which was $24.50 at the time. FAMEX said okay, so they went through that budget year at the $24.50 rate. Then COVID hit. COVID hit in this current, or last fiscal year, I guess in '22. So as a part of the budget discussion for the current fiscal year that we are in, FAMEX at the time in June, it was a timing issue. In June had asked if he could put the rate back up to $25.50. We said, well, it's kind of a late timing issue right now. Let's just go ahead and go through with the rate that we had agreed to per contract, and then have a discussion about the rate increase sometime later, which brings us to where we are right now. So, not to take too much of Hank's thunder over here, because I know he has some information that he wants to share, but we do have that rate request for you. We do have the grant money to absorb the $25.50 rate, but I think it'd be beneficial for you to hear some of the information that Hank has presented when he looked at comparable systems throughout the state as well, too. So, unless you have questions, I'll pass it on to Hank.
Ms. Adams.
Why didn't we just bring both? I mean, I know they didn't request the increase, but gas is going up and everything, and so I guess he's gonna tell me the comparables, but did we reach out to BMW,
yes, sir. No, sir, we didn't yet, because we have just one written request. I mean, the thing that we look at is like every business is gonna have their own operational model for the benefits they pay, what they can reimburse, so we just figured that if there was an issue, we would wait for the written request. However, that's not saying that after this meeting, we could call them up and as a part of the upcoming budget year, which is coming up here shortly on this, that we would have, I think the contracts would be renewed again this year. We would have them at the table again to have them both going to the same rate moving forward.
Don't realize that, maybe they didn't know to ask. I mean, you asked it, you have not because you asked not. I mean, someone always told me that, but, I mean, they may say, okay, here's the contract, I'm gonna live and die by the contract, but in my estimation, if it can be absorbed, and I don't know if it can, or what you're looking at, then we have to do both at the same time, but, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, that was my fairness.
Yeah.
Yes, we receive a large amount of annual funding. That's, I think there are 4 individual funding parts for each one of these service providers that we pay them out of. So yes, there's funding available to accommodate that, but as Mr. Howard stated, we've only had one request, so. Yeah, so we looked at all of the community transportation service systems in the state of North Carolina. Cumberland County is very unique as far as the way it implements or applies its community transportation system. There's a total of 3 out of almost 150 systems that are contracted out to the level and degree that our community transportation is. One system is with the city of Wilson. That system, they pay a rate of $29 per trip, and the other system is in Whiteville, North Carolina, and their rate is $35. I'm sorry, 29 is Whiteville, and $36.45 is Wilson.
Commissioner Keith.
Okay, the Mr. P says is, how many trips are we making a year?
I do not have the specific amount of trips, but they are increasing.
Okay, but if it's 5,000, that's a $5,000 thing. If it's 100,000 trips a year that we're paying out, then it's just say it's increasing a dollar without knowing how many trips it is.
We do have that data.
And y'all looked at that.
It's not like it would be a black hole.
Yeah, it can be.
We have the money to absorb a lot of these requests.
Any other questions or comments?
What's the money if you don't use it?
For these funds, some of them get rescinded, and some of the pots of funding become unobligated and they grow. So,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to consider.
Is there a second? Commissioner.
And I do accept this one, but give them an authority. I mean, the other people, I mean, they're in the same boat. I mean, I was out the other day trying to fill my car with $3.09 a gallon. So they needed to, I mean, if one needs it, I think they both need to be able to reach out to them. If they say no, then that's fine. So if you could do both. I mean, the money's there, it can be absorbed.
One's already 2550,
They're both at $24.50. They went down.
They both,
Yeah, they both, and everybody else is paying $29 and $30. We might need to look at that next year. But
We also might look at doing it ourselves if they don't set a contract. My motion is that we approve the 2550 for Phoenix, but if you could come back to us and see about doing a blanket. And the number.
Before they can.
And Commissioner Council second.
Before they can.
All in favor?
unanimous.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. The next item is item 4F. It's the revised Community Development Rental Rehabilitation Program Policy. I ask our Community Development Director, Ms. Dee Taylor, to present this item. Welcome, Dee.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Recently, Community Development has been reviewing all of its programs across the board, and to ensure that our programs are meeting the needs of the community, and as well as ensuring that we're meeting our expenditure obligation across the for our beneficiaries. So the purpose of this particular program is to provide low-interest loan to investor owners, or who are also the landlords, for the housing units, that they will use our funding to rehab or acquire properties if needed, and then in turn rent it out to households that meet the income requirements of having income at or below 80% of the area median income. So currently, we feel the need to revise these policies for the main purpose of expanding the affordable housing stock in our community. Also, to meet the needs of the special populations in our community. When I say special populations, I mean those who are elderly, homeless, who have a disability, who are victims of domestic violence, and your large families. But also, we want to revise these policies too, because currently we average we probably make applications about 2 per year. Last year, we were only able to fund 1 applicant, 1 investor owner. And with the demand in our community for affordable rental housing, we felt the need to revise this program just so we can draw more interest from those investor owners to our program, and again, meet the needs of our beneficiaries in our community, those who are low-income renters. So just to go over the main revisions in the policy, throughout the policy, you'll see highlighted in blue text. There have been some additions. Basically, these were just general, most of it was general program requirements that we already had in place. It was outlined in our agreements or our other documents such as our deed of trust, but we probably just didn't have it clarified in the body of our policy. So just for consistency, we wanted to make sure that that was included. Section 7.3, we did make a change on the loan, the interest rate. Currently, it is at 3%. We felt like we lowered down to 0%. That may draw some interest there. And then another financing option that we felt was really needed was to provide that financing option where they can apply for a full forgivable deferred loan, provided though that they serve that special population group. They have to serve that special population group in order to obtain that financing option. We also included an affordability chart. However, with CDBG funds, it's not required. There is no affordability period required, but we wanted to just establish something as, set some type of parameters for this particular program that mimics our other HUD-funded program. And then we included in Section 8, ineligible activities, which mainly means that they cannot apply for our funds if it's going to cause displacement of a current tenant. So we wanted to make sure that was included. And this is just an example of the affordability chart. So if they apply for funds for less than $15,000, for instance, they have to make the unit affordable for a period of at least 5 years. Even if they paid off the loan sooner, they still have to remain affordable during at least for a minimum of those periods. And so the overall goal, again, for this program, it will meet our strategies identified in our consolidated 5-year strategic plan. One of those is the housing strategy and preserving the existing housing stock, especially for our renters. It meets the special needs strategy in making housing available for especially those with a physical disability. And it meets the needs of the other special population group, those who are at risk or who are homeless. And at this time, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Stewart?
Yes. How do homeowners know about this?
Oh, well, we occasionally this is an ongoing, our application is ongoing, but most of them find out through our website or when we go out when we have public meetings, we mention it during those times. And so that's mainly how most of them find out about the program.
I'm sorry.
I'm just surprised that last year there was only one applicant, which led into my question, how do people know about it?
And then too, one of the requirements that the units have to be in Cumberland County. I would say we received more inquiries, but we were only able to qualify one applicant.
About the investor.
Yes, I'm talking about the investor, not the tenants. I apologize.
Okay.
Which is why, I guess my question would have been, have we gone to the real estate organization they had and got on their agenda and made the pitch? I know we don't have about 2 chodos in town, maybe 3. That's one of the problems of our community as opposed to Wake and Mecklenburg. that just, and that's not your, I mean, that's just the issue that we have. But, you know, I come in this building every day and I know I see people downstairs looking at these foreclosures and buying these foreclosures. There ought to be something up on that wall. And maybe what we need to do is look at PIO doing a blitz or whatever to those investor-owned properties as opposed to sitting there. That would have been my question too is, you know, you can't get much better than this program. You know, 0%, and it can actually be forgiven too. That's even more so, I mean, you know, Mr. Chairman, look at over here. But I think it's a phenomenal program. I think the changes you made were good. I think that if we don't get any people off of this, we got some issues, and you know, I know the property has to be here, but the owner doesn't have to be in Cumberland County.
No, sir.
Okay, so I think we need to make sure, because a lot of people are owner investors that don't live, and a lot of my classmates, for instance, have property that they're renting out now because they got it from their family members, but they don't live in Fayetteville, may not know about the program, but the rehab program and all of that, so it's.
Are there any more questions or comments for Ms. Taylor?
What's the ask? We need a motion.
Yeah, I would move that the community staff.
I didn't ask for a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Council, she got in trouble. Ms. Council got in trouble.
I had forgotten, and I wanted to make a motion.
Are there any more questions or comments from Ms. Taylor? If not, now, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the revised rehabilitation program. Let's see, move it to the August 18th consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Thank you. I'm second.
All in favor? Thank you, Ms. Madam Manager.
Mr. Chairman, this is an item that was discussed and approved at the September agenda session, and that was how we move forward with the homelessness strategic plan. So Ms. Taylor reached out to Orco about a proposal for Orco to facilitate the recommendations in that homelessness strategic plan. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. And as Ms. Cannon mentioned, at the September 20th Board of Commissioners meeting, the board approved for county staff to obtain a proposal from Orco Consulting Incorporated to obtain a scope of work for them to assist the county staff in implementation of the homelessness strategic plan that they prepared for the county. So attached is the Orco's proposal, which outlines the scope of services in implementing a 3-year strategic plan. So it's broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 is where they actually identify, again, the leading voices in our community and working with those individuals within 5 different working groups. One is the strategic leadership work group, and then the remaining 4 work groups actually covers those 4 impact areas that they identified in the strategic plan, which is ensuring that there is access to services, that we expand permanent housing, that we obtain or research additional funding resources in our community that can support these programs, and that we expand wellness opportunities such as mental health services for the homeless population. Phase 2, and in addition to Phase 1, they also are developing a 1-year work plan for those leading voices to ensure that they're taking the necessary action steps to support these activities. Phase 2 is where there's the ongoing monitoring and just basically reporting and checking on the progress and basically meeting those, staying on track and addressing those action steps. And Phase 3 is where they hand off
the responsibility to county leadership and the partnering agencies to take on the role of continuing to address those needs in the homelessness, staying on track with the action steps identified within those work groups and in the homelessness strategic plan. So community development funds are available to support their proposed fee. And so therefore, we're asking the board to approve moving this item to the October 18th meeting as a consent item and approve the amount, approve the proposal with OR code in the amount not to exceed $30,500.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
I'd move to approve this, an amount not to exceed $30,500 submitted by OCO. Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Ms. Taylor, before you leave, I have a quick comment or a quick question right quick. I had the opportunity to be with some individuals that work on homelessness this past weekend. I ran into a 18-year-old young man who was homeless, and his buddies was with him, and they were also homeless. And they wanted to find somewhere to stay because they were outside and all. What do we tell individuals? Do we have funding that will help individuals as far as staying somewhere temporarily? What is it that we can do with monies that we have that was allocated for homelessness from our federal government? What can we do to assist individuals like that?
Well, when it comes to the federal funds, majority of those are targeted for permanent housing type activity, with the exception of the funds that is passed down through the state, where they do fund a couple homeless shelters for operation and services, as well as permanent housing. It's very limited, but there is some available for that. We have been, for situations like that, working with our partnering agencies to make certain, like, general funds available to temporary place them into, like, hotels until they're permanent housing, especially if they've identified other housing options, and they just need a place until they're able to move into their housing location. We help cover, like, hotel costs.
Okay. And one more question, I'm sorry. And the only reason I'm asking this is because we are talking about homelessness right now. But the other question is the funding that is coming, that they come down from the ARP funds that specifically addresses homelessness. Those funds are used for what?
Okay, I think I'm not sure.
Yeah.
For the ARP funds?
Yes.
I'm not aware.
Am I saying that right?
Well, I'm not sure.
So let me see if I can clarify with Chairman Evans. Are you saying overall can ARP funds be used for homelessness?
Well, no, and maybe I'm speaking wrong, but from what I read, and I believe I read, that there was funding allocated for homelessness.
That the county did?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So we have allocated funding to bring on an owner's agent for the homeless shelter that the board has discussed about moving forward.
Okay, well, and I understand that, and I clearly understand. I was just wondering, was there any funding available for individuals that are just coming off the street that need assistance, that's trying to have a better life besides being homeless? Is there something that we could do, and you would say the community?
Well, there are federal funds that are passed down to our partner agencies as well as the county, where we use those funds for permanent housing mainly, because there are certain requirements that HUD had established for those particular funding programs.
Okay, well, see, yes, Commissioner Stewart.
For homeless persons.
I believe that. Let me see if I can rephrase it so that I can get the answer that I think that you're looking for.
Well, that's great.
regardless of where the money comes from, regardless of where the money is at, there is money available for those who are homeless. Is there something available for those who find themselves right at the moment, right in a crisis, right now? Is there money available to help them find sheltering? If there is no sheltering in the only shelter we have, or one of the couple shelters we have, if there is no room for them, is there money available that a person can call someone? Where can they call to get assistance that they may need right then and there, and is there money available for that?
So the best thing for that individual to do is to contact the community-wide coordinated entry system, the 910-479-4663 number. The housing specialist on that line will do an assessment to determine what's the best housing option for that individual. They'll need to gather all the information they can so they can determine which programs they may qualify for in our community. There is chance that, of course, there's a wait list with a lot of these programs. So as far as immediate, that's where we have to work with our partnering agencies to see if we can find a temporary solution in the meantime. But that's the first place they want to contact.
Can they call there anytime, or they can only call there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5?
Just during those, right, and unless they're a victim of domestic violence, of course, there's the 24-hour hotline.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stewart, and thank you, Ms. Texas. Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. The next item is 4H.
Oh, 1 second, I'm sorry. Commissioner Council.
No, I will ask my question after. It's okay. I was just thinking emergency. That's what.
All right, cool. Thank you. Madam Manager.
Item 4H, and our county engineer, Mr. Jermaine Walker, is going to present this item, but just as a reminder, last month, the board approved moving forward with a space needs analysis and a facilities master plan for several of our county facilities. And so Mr. Walker today is presenting the proposal from Creech and Associates. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, to the Board of Commissioners. Just a quick recap. So we started this process back on May 3rd, and we submitted we advertised a request for qualifications for the General Government Services Building Space Utilization and Site Analysis Study. And that study would examine the usage in the current courthouse for Judge E. Maurice Braswell, Cumberland County Courthouse, the Cumberland County Historic Courthouse, and then 109 Bradford. And what we were looking at were the space need requirements, and then the current use of those facilities and those departments that are directly under the span of control of the county manager. And then we're looking at where those staff sections could be relocated in the future General Government Services Building. And so then we brought that to the board in August, and then we accepted the selection of Creech and Associates as preferred choice to conduct the GSSB specialization and site analysis study, and then we were granted permission to go into negotiations and also develop a refined scope of work. And when we refined that scope of work, we determined that we needed to add additional buildings to that study, and that was the St. Hour building, which is 223 Hull Road, and then the Winding Creek Annex, which is 707 Executive Place. And so the purpose of that study is to create a facility master plan that incorporates the future design and construction of a new General Government Services building and select renovations of other facilities, and then we would bring that result back to the Board of Commissioners. And within that study, we also have a capital cost estimation and implementation plan, so we'd be able to determine what it would cost to rehab some of these additional pre-existing facilities, to construct the new general government services building, and then also take a look at providing us options for revenue sources for all of these. And so the cost of this study, we determined to be $331,500, but that gives us the facilities condition assessment, the space needs analysis, and a facilities master plan. And on the back end of that's going to give us a conceptual design, a 35% design, which if the board decides to move forward, that would save us money on the back end.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Could you give me the figure for the cost of the services once again?
$331,500. And this was previously approved and funded in the capital investment fund.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Yes, ma'am.
When I looked at this information, they were all very similar from these counties, and I couldn't figure out who started first. You know, Cumberland, everybody like to copy from each other. That's neither here nor there. That's fine.
We're right, ma'am.
I didn't mean to say that.
We appreciate your observation. I think we all. Thank you so much. Is there, Madam Manager?
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is another carry forward from the September agenda session, and it's discussion about the historic courthouse and renovations, the future use of it. We've had ongoing discussion about using that courtroom as an expanded space for the commissioners. And then there's additional consideration about the condition of the building, additional consideration about ADA accessibility. So at the October 16th agenda, there was a motion that was approved 4-3 to use $3 million of the American Rescue Plan funds to make it ADA compatible and to utilize that courtroom for the Board of Commissioners meetings. At the last agenda session, there was discussion about reconsidering that item and exactly discussion about how we move forward based on the condition of that building. And so I was asked to come back with some thoughts, and after having discussion with Mr. Walker, here's my recommendation. Specifically, the historic courthouse is included in that study. And I think it would be good to get an outside assessment of what's the best utilization of that historic building for the county. Is it a renovation or is it historic preservation for some use? And so the recommendation is to suspend consideration of renovating it temporarily to allow Creech and Associates to come back with a recommendation. But in the meantime, Mr. Walker has already made some improvements to that building on the interior, significant to the customer perception as well as employees, in fixing issues with the ceiling, walls, where the walls peeling. And so there's been work, and we'll continue that work. We won't just stop, because we realize there is some interior work that can be done without an extensive amount of money. But our recommendation is to let this go through that facility needs assessment. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments for our manager, Commissioner Keith?
Yes. Number one, I know that it was controversial, but it was a vote by the Board of Commissioners to do that. And you can't just arbitrarily for her to do that without the board reconvening and re-voting again.
Correct. I'm just making I was asked in the minutes, Commissioner Adams asked the manager to come back with a recommendation.
But it would have to be, you can't go against the board.
Absolutely.
Right.
The board would have to make a motion here.
The board would have to go back. But, and I would say, I know you were on the meeting yesterday, the thing, and Mr. Stewart, I think we were on it also, but, that building falls in the qualified citizens tract. And it does meet what our needs were to make it an accessible space, having to do with COVID and everything that we're doing. And I realize that it can only be going towards the public spaces. I understand that. But Commissioner Stewart was right. The buildings are wrecked. And it's going to take a major renovation and a commitment in one way or the other to do that. So my only point was, my intent was to take away the pain a little bit with ARP money. I should have discussed that earlier. But I was trying to lessen the pain, the financial pain, because I knew we'd have to invest some of that building also.
If I was gonna make a motion, it wouldn't undo what's already done and just suspend it and stop it now till this report comes back, and then have, whether we do any other further discussion. Because I think that it's gonna take, that will lessen the pain, but we need to go ahead and figure out how much more we need to put in there to be able to do it right for all of these people.
And my recommendation in my
it's to
motion is to
suspend.
suspend it.
Right, just to
It's not
suspend it,
yes.
not to do anything with it, but to halt any further expenditure waiting for this report to come back. And if you have any other comment, that would be my motion.
Okay, I haven't got a report.
Mr. Walker, when do you think the report will be back?
8 months.
Mr. Chair?
But can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
That's for the interim report to come back. But you could prioritize where you go, and I think it's clearly that we want to prioritize maybe something on that building. So I think even though the interim report is, you know.
Commissioner, we can front load that if that's desired.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and to Commissioner Keith's point about what he heard at the meeting, I guess, yesterday, the webinar yesterday, though it is in a qualified census tract, and we do have a lot more flexibility, there still is very considerable regulations on, when you talk about general government services buildings, we're still limited. I think you said this, Mr. Keith, we're still limited to things that make the building safer for use. They particularly mention ventilation and spacing requirements. So $3 million is kind of, I think, the top limit of what you would be looking at in terms of doing that in that public meeting area for the board to conduct business. So just don't think that you can bleed over ARP money into this bigger budget. Yes, thank you.
When Commissioner Stewart brought it to our attention, and Commissioner Keith brought it for one reason, and then Commissioner Stewart brought it for another reason. And the other reason, and I kind of understood both of them, but what I'm really concerned about is what Commissioner Stewart had brought it about. She brought this to us with pictures showing us how bad this facility is. I believe that this is a good building. I believe that it's a good historical building. Since we like to do things here in Bayville and Cumberland County to keep reminding us of where we were, this would be one good place to renovate and keep that way. I'm not saying doing it now. If I'm not here and other commissioners are here, I would like to see this building, and this is just a personal opinion of me, for me. I would like to see this building redone and used in some capacity that would show the history of the individuals that are on the walls in that building and people that are visiting Cumberland County. That's a beautiful piece of work of art. And I hope that the work that is being done now is with the employees in mind and the citizens that come in to do business there. I hope that we hurriedly get that done, because it just doesn't make sense for employees to be working in those type of conditions, and for the citizens of this great county to come in to have work done and notice that it's just a mess.
I think we all agree, Mr. Chair.
You know, but the reason I'm saying this because people have a tendency of saying that government moves slow. Government moves slow because we are the government. And so the only thing things are going to move fast if we see that there's a need to be done, then we need to take care of it. And don't wait and don't keep pushing the can down the road always on big projects. So that's all I have to say about it. Are there any other questions or comments?
Move that we suspend the consideration of, just suspend any further, but I think he's gonna take care of the day-to-day issues that need to be done over there, and I think staff is, you know, our strategic plan, y'all kind of put me in charge of those buildings, so we looking at it, so, but then we suspend it. I would ask him to prioritize that one in that scheme of things, as we go along. In terms of the preach.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you for, Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. Item 4J is a request to consider contracts at regular Board of Commissioners meetings under certain conditions, and I'll ask our Finance Director, Vicki Evans, to present this item.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I think she made that request, it makes sense, because sometimes we mess up the timeline, and I move that we, follow the request.
With the anticipation that we get that contract prior to that night meeting.
It would be in the packet.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
As long as it's in the
Everything would be- Yeah, absolutely. Everything would be in the packet.
Well, I appreciate that, but I would like for her to present it, we had this cameras put in here for a reason. I would like for you to present it if you don't mind.
He wants her to present.
I would like for her to present it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Since June of this year, consideration for contracts that require board approval have gone to the board through the agenda session meetings after legal sufficiency approval has occurred. And so there have been times when contract approval process has been delayed because of needing to wait for an agenda session meeting to occur. And to save time in getting contracts fully executed, staff are requesting that contracts that require board approval be allowed to be presented as an item of business at a regular board meeting if waiting for the next agenda session will create delays that negatively impact the project timeline or cost.
Okay, are there any comments? Questions? Now you got an opportunity.
But there's a motion on the floor.
I withdraw my second.
Somebody else bring.
I'll say.
Okay, so motion been made and properly seconded, all in favor?
May I confirm the second to the motion after the vote? Thank you very much.
Vote yes.
Thank you.
Is that unanimous?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Item 4K is a request to conduct a community survey. I'll ask Assistant Manager Sally Shutt to present this item.
Good afternoon. I'm bringing our board request to conduct the county resident survey to assess awareness and perception of county services and to gather citizen feedback to help with strategic planning. The first community county survey would set a baseline for future surveys and for performance measurements. So the recommendation includes hiring a survey consultant that specializes in conducting surveys, resident surveys, for jurisdictions, and that also has the research to provide benchmarking data for us. If the board approves, the suggested timeline would be to work with a consultant to design the survey instrument and the sampling plan by early November, conduct the survey later in November and December so that the results could come back to the commissioners and management prior to the planning retreat, the anticipated planning retreat. So in your packet, there are samples of surveys that have been conducted by other county governments in North Carolina. And I just wanted to point out that as part of the board's priority for governmental communications, public information and innovation and technology services are tasked with developing a comprehensive communications plan. So we would be doing a survey of citizens. So the recommendation here is to make that more extensive so that we can gather additional feedback. This survey would be then representative of what's conducted by other local governments. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions or comments?
I just have one. I sent to, and I think sent it to Mr. Keith, the city of Greensboro had a tremendous, it takes money and you invest in it, but you don't have to go out and get these consultants because it gives the citizens the opportunity to have direct impact. I mean, I don't know, did y'all ever look at that? I mean, I thought it was tremendous in it.
On the budgeting part, they provide.
Yeah, but they just used it for budgeting, but it can be used for anything that you wanted to do, and citizens could touch you like it was just unbelievable in terms of that. And not that I'm opposed to this, but I think if you're talking about doing these benchmarks and paying for each one of these surveys, that instrument, it probably costs a little bit, but it would probably be well invested in.
And we did do a demo with that. We did do a demo with that as well, with the board allow us to pursue a platform for community engagement, either through surveys or that type of platform.
I mean, I just saw it. They haven't seen it, so I can't tell. I don't know that they want to vote on it, but I think the platform was tremendous. I don't know what it costs, so the cost may be prohibitive, but I think if you at least bring it back for the board to see, I don't think we slow down your survey on this, but it's maybe something that we need to look at going down the road. I think it was just, yeah.
I think Commissioner Council is. Did you have something, Mr. Council? Mr. Keith?
Mr. Adam, 100% agree. You know, one of the things we did on the ARP committee, I know. One of the things we did on I thought that there was a pilot program and it was very good. We got some good information, although on a smaller scale, but that techniques are what, I imagine you just put these PDFs on here for us to look at. I'm sure they would be electronic, right? We're not looking at mailing out all.
Well, some of it do mail out some to make sure you get and reach different parts of the community geographically.
Right, and I understand that, but electronically, the feedback was immediate, it was able to be disseminated, whereas I really like it. What I understand, Glenn, on that Greensboro thing, they bought it for one thing, but they kind of tilted it a little bit and did it with something else. One of the things that I found out when I was tasked to do communication, I asked every commissioner, I said, where do you get your information? And if it wasn't from county emails, it was social media, their friends. It's so much harder to communicate with citizens nowadays. I mean, it used to be radio, television, newspaper. That was it. You did it. Now there's so much else out there. I don't even know the best way to communicate. But if we don't hear from our citizens in the best way we can, how do we know what the priorities should be for us? I would, Commissioner Adams, or we have something else, I think we should be able to invest in a system to communicate with our citizens that can be manipulated to different things. I believe the one in Greensboro, wasn't it how they could spend the budget?
Yeah,
they thought they could spend the budget.
It was the budget scenario. It could be used for whatever. It was ARP, it could be used for anything.
Yeah, so I love a survey because, you know, the people I talk to are the people that Charles talks to, or the people that Commissioner Booth or Adams talks to. So we don't hear, we hear people say, well, I talked to somebody who said this. Well, come on, let's bring them all in. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any more questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to investigate further electronic community survey software program.
Is it this one, what we're doing, we have to do this one?
Yeah, I just don't want a bunch of mail outs, it's gonna be electronic.
Is there a second?
Well, I screwed up.
Or combination?
The motion is to continue with the community survey and ask staff to investigate software opportunities.
Yes.
So move to second by Commissioner Council. Is there any other questions? If not, let's take the vote. All in favor?
That is unanimous.
Thank you. Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. The next item is amendment of a land lease agreement with Crown Castle South LLC. Mr. Jackson.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Jackson.
So the county has a small piece of land in the Cumberland Industrial Center that it leases to Crown Castle South for the location of it's called a monopole cell tower. This has been in place since 1997. This lease expires in September 2022, and Crown Castle South LLC has come to the county and is has proposed to pay a $5,000 bonus for amending, extending the agreement, commencing on September 24th, 2022, and then every 5 years thereafter, known as an adjustment date, increasing annual rent by the amount equal to 15% of the annual rent in effect for the year immediately preceding the adjustment date. So comparison of the current and proposed lease terms is attached. This does appear to be an increase in the revenue to the county for this piece of property. So what staff is requesting is that this item be moved forward to the October 18th, 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting as an item of business due to statutory requirements for a resolution of intent to lease by the board in the 30-day advertising period of the intent to lease. I'm glad to try to answer any questions you may have.
What is the annual rent right now?
Let me get to the comparison sheet in the department packet.
I couldn't find it.
That's okay. Hopefully it's on there. So the fourth 5-year renewal was the $10,494 annual rent.
This the industrial center down there off of, Tom Starr?
Yes, sir. It's located on Technology Drive, but yes, sir, in that area.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't in the new one we just gave this guy to build all this, it might get in the way, but yes.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 5 on the agenda, and that is other items, and specifically, the first item is American Rescue Plan update. And so I don't know if the chair of that committee, or you want, would you like to?
I'll be happy to brief the other. We've met. We've met a number of times. But the School of Government is putting on a number of seminars, telling us what we can and cannot do. So we have prioritized the list of our short-term items until the attorney or the manager tells us we can't do them. And that was the list approved by the board last week. So we're really waiting on more clear guidance from the School of Government on processes of acceptable expenditures.
Okay, any comments or questions for Commissioner Keith? Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, we did include 2 presentations in your packet, one from the attorney and one from the finance director, that really laid out from a legal perspective and financial perspective, the program requirements. One of the most limiting factors is that the general statutes are more restrictive than the Treasury guidelines, and that's what we're working through in this, really the 6-day session of training with the School of Government, the NCACC, the League of Municipalities, the Pandemic Recovery Office. So it's, yesterday was a very good session.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Is there any other comments pertaining to this item? If not, we'll be moving to Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. Chairman Adams right now is leading the city-county liaison meeting, and I tried to assist him by putting together some background information, but we want to lead with a success story. And so,
My success story. I gotta give y'all something good. So city-county liaison has been meeting. You know I had to deal with my library, right? Our libraries. That's ours. But if you ever been up to North Regional, the sidewalk, anybody from the city, but anyway, they don't mind anyway. The sidewalk came up all the way up Rose Hill Road, and then what happened is behind Rose Hill Road, where it's MacArthur Road, heading down toward, all the way down, going toward Ramsey Street, and it's where it was all dirt, and if you ever been back there, right past that, it doesn't make sense, they just stopped it. It's a whole lot of condos, condominiums, houses, and so we talked at the city county liaison, and within that period of time, you all see the sidewalk that has been put in by the city of Fayetteville for a sidewalk that runs all the way down, and at the end of this there is another sidewalk on the other end of the street. So all of those citizens, Dr. Green's not here, we can try to get those help, get them healthy, they can walk to the library now. So that's our success story.
What it costs us?
Nothing.
No commitment.
No, we didn't have anything, just the city did this.
That's nice. Beautiful.
I'm not gonna ask you when the mayor said how to get done faster than some of the other things, but anyway, that's our success story. The city actually stepped up and did an excellent job putting in the sidewalk and completed that. It just made sense. Chairman Evans and Commissioner Stewart is on that city county liaison with me, so they helped us make sure that the city understood that. One of the other items, and you can see in your packet that came up dealing with the homeless initiative is way back, I don't even remember when we did the
interlocal agreement?
Yes.
I think it was back in 2017, as I recall.
And I can have Dee come up, because Dee is familiar with this, but there was a homeless committee that was founded. If you remember, I think everybody was probably here except for Commissioner Stewart. We did $100,000, the city did $100,000. We had a consultant, they spent the $100,000, then I think they stopped working, but anyway. We have re-energized that, we had that conversation because it would dovetail into the next one. So was, from the city county liaison was to re-energize that committee, but as they did that, the discussion was that the committee be expanded. I think it was one county commissioner, one city council person, and the manager. So they're asking for 2 county commissioners, 2 city council members, a deputy city manager, the assistant county manager, city and county community development directors, the continuum of care chairperson, the school superintendent or his designee, and the board of education member. So does anybody have any questions or comments? So I would make a motion to approve the recommended members of the homeless committee recorded above. I think they met last week. Didn't y'all meet?
Tracy came.
Yeah, they met.
Yes, we did. I don't know if you have any specific questions or if there's anything you want right now.
No,
We'll have an update for the city county liaison meeting next meeting.
So I'd make a motion to approve the recommended members of the homeless committee
which were recorded, that is just identified, and that they go back to the city council, and they're taking it back for their approval, but I would ask for approval on that.
Is that a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Also, at the city-county liaison committee meeting, there was a question and comment about the makeup of the Fayetteville Cumberland County Economic Development Commission. As you're aware, the county has some appointments, the city has some appointments, and there was supposed to be some appointments by a standing group, and the question became, who was that standing group, who made those recommendations, and that two of those members have been on there since the inception of when we created the city, the interlocal agreement with the city, and so there were questions raised and questions relating to term limits, and term limits, board diversity, and membership on the Business Advisory Council. I don't even, besides the manager, maybe I don't know if there's even a female on the board. I don't think so. And so, that was the diversity part, the dealing with that. And Mr. Van Gien said, I think came up to identify who the group is that's making these two appointments, and supposedly they were forming it. I know everybody should have gotten an email from him. I think it went to all of us that talked about some of the members of that board. But I would tell you, and I'm not asking for any action today, I'll come back and maybe do that. But the committee they're talking about that was forming to be able to make these appointments is two things. One, they couldn't tell us who was on it. But two, you got to pay a $150 fee. And I don't think that does two things for me. I think, and for us, we have to think about it, is that's in direct competition to the chamber. I don't know how these small businesses can pay a chamber fee and then pay a $150 fee to be a part of this. I think there's some working out that needs to be done. We need to have some conversation on that, because I think you need a viable chamber. You got to have a viable chamber to be able to do this. I'm not saying the chamber makes the appointments to this board, but they shouldn't be in competition with each other for this $150 fee to be a part of this, because then this membership over here is going to get to be a little bit exclusive, because then you got to make a decision. Do I do this one? Do I do that one? And what do I get from being on this is just to make up two appointments to this board. That's a little bit, I think there's some issue with that. The other thing is, I believe that we form economic development to be economic development. They should not be the one that goes out and creates a group. A group can come, but it shouldn't be using those energies to be able to go out and identify and bring in these groups. We need to maybe at some point redefine what it is that we think the direction from this board, at least, as to what the Federal Economic Development Board does. Now, they do an excellent job. He's bringing in companies, he's bringing in a lot of jobs, but I think that it needs to work in conjunction with everything else. I think when Mr. Keith get on the CVB, he'll find that out too. So between the TDA, the Chamber, FEDC, the CVB, all of those entities have to work together for this community to move forward. So I think we need to have that discussion at some point. But I'm just bringing back that was some of the issues that was brought up at the city-county liaison. I'll be open to any questions or comments that anybody may have.
Are there any questions or comments?
And then I think it was one last one, wasn't it? Oh, and just to be real quick, is that Commissioner Stewart presented on the paramedic collaboration, and I think that everybody was kind of in agreement with that. Then it morphed over into the next discussion, which is that the city has done the homeless center. The day center. I'm sorry, the day center. Yes, the day center. And we're moving forward on
the shelter issue. So we've got two things going forward. The city wanted to know, and I think it was the question that they put on the table, is whether the county would collaborate with the city, which is kind of that first one I told you, which would dovetail into this one, through that homeless thing, and move forward on tackling the homeless issue. I will tell you, Commissioner Evans voted no to bring on this. It was, I think, 5-1 in terms of the vote. But so that each board could then determine, are you going on your own, or are we going as a group? And so I bring that for discussion to the board. That came out of the city-county liaison.
Commissioner Stewart.
My opinion is that the city has already started doing what they're doing. We have our own endeavor that we need to be doing, which is fulfilling one of the gaps that we have identified. I don't think that it would be beneficial to split or divide our attention to what we're doing and what they have started doing. So it would be my position to let them do their day center and we focus on the shelter part. At some point, they very well, and I believe, will need some things from the county, but they started the day center. We went to the walkthrough and asked questions about what they were going to have in the facility and things of that nature, and they don't know. We need to focus on what we do know, and that's the fact that we have an issue with getting beds in this community. And my decision, my choice would be to just focus on our shelter and not the day center.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
And I'm not in kind of disagreement with you. I'm kind of in agreement, but on a little bit more. I do think we move on with the shelter that we've already decided to do, and we can do that, because that's doing the shelter. And I think they can renovate and do the day center. They're going to do that. I mean, that's going to have to happen. But they're going to have to come back to us, and there's going to have to be some communication down the road. So I would believe that we keep these projects separate, move forward, but that this homeless committee move forward, because there has to be, you can't do, I just don't believe that it can be done disjointed. I think it has to be at some point meshed, but those two, which are just physical buildings, and can go ahead and be done, and then we move forward from there. But we don't stop doing the shelter, they don't stop doing the day center, but there's going to have to be some communication down the road to be able to do this, to tackle this. It's a Herculean effort, and I think that it's going to take all of us and all of our resources to be able to do that.
And my question to you, I think we're thinking about the same thing. I'm in total agreement with Commissioner Stewart, and I think that Commissioner Adams and I agree, but I just want to understand from him, at some point that you're talking about, that we're going to have to join together for the services, or provide service. What are you talking about specifically?
That, I think, is what the homeless, I don't have the answers. I would tell you, that's why I think the homeless committee, the initiative that I talked about first, that's what they're challenged and staff to do. I think that, though, that I always believe there's only a finite amount of resources anywhere. I don't care where you are in the world, there's only a finite amount of resources. And so you have to merge those resources to maximize what you do. And so I think we have to maximize that with the city. I mean, not just necessarily with the city. I mean, it's going to be some other folk that they have to, everybody that needs to come to the table to be at that table to have that discussion. Because it's not going to end with the building of a day center. It's not going to end with the building of a shelter. Those are two things that will be completed and done, but then what? And so that's where this group, I think, we need to go ahead and say, we're willing to work together through this organization that has already been done and with the interlocal agreement to move forward. I think that's the only way we're going to tackle this and get through this.
Yeah, so we're looking at services with DSS, the health department, things of that nature that it's going to be needed in both of these facilities.
Right, that's right.
So apparently, so we're on the same.
Yeah, we're on the same way. I mean, we don't stop doing I don't think doing this stops the shelter.
Right.
We've already got the design going, and we'll move forward wherever. You voted on that.
Any other places or comments? Or you finish?
It's just gonna be a shelter. It's just gonna be a
They
shelter.
got a day center, we building.
Are we just building a shelter, that's it? No.
We don't know what all is.
But they're doing it, they're looking at, I mean.
Are we designing something? No.
The design has not started.
No, it hasn't started.
Oh, no, because I thought there was more to it.
No, you remember out of the ARP, we put some money toward that. It's getting late, isn't it? Getting late.
I told you you shouldn't.
I think more places or comments to Mr. Hannah's report, or do you have any?
Well, I'd make a motion that we, that we move forward with the city and do it through the homeless initiative that we have. And that doesn't deal with the day center or the shelter, because those move independently.
Well, the motion
Which motion?
would be if we're going to collaborate with the city.
Yeah.
That's not what you
What did I
said.
say? Sometimes I talk too much, I don't know what I said. But anyway, a motion to collaborate with the city, but using the homeless.
Using the model of the homeless committee?
Right, that's right. Yeah, that's my motion.
That's your motion, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second? Second. All in favor?
I'm
Wait a minute.
confused. I'm confused.
Okay.
I'm confused. Because the motion here is that it's my understanding that the motion was if we're going to collaborate with the city on the day center.
No,
Okay.
the day center's their day center, the shelter's their shelter on my thing, because they gotta build that. And then after that, they will, hopefully this group will have some conversation about what may
So
go
you're not
into
talking
it.
about collaborating with the city? That's, you're not.
Yes, I am on the homelessness beyond these two things.
Okay, I guess what Commissioner Stewart is saying, when the motion is made, to make it clear.
Yeah, to collaborate with the city on the homeless initiative, not just the day center. The day center is their day center, they need to pay for it, do whatever. This group may end up saying, inside this day center or whatever, as the city and the county move this, what needs to happen. And we move forward with the ARP out of the shelter. So that was the motion, the second, Mr. Chairman.
Adams, I do apologize, but could the motion be restated, please?
Motion to collaborate with the city on homelessness. Okay. That's the easiest way to do it. Using the
Homeless committee?
through the homeless committee that we have an interlocal agreement with the city already. That's all.
I think our programs has a better chance of success. So I don't want to tie up our assets.
I guess my confusion is coming in, because that's one motion to collaborate with the homeless committee. And then we have here another motion.
That was brought back. I mean, ours is whether we're gonna collaborate with the city using, I mean, that's,
So you're only talking about the committee, the homeless committee. That's all you're talking about.
that this board is in agreement to collaborate with the city on the homelessness issue through the model that we have. Yes. Basically, to work with the city. That's what we're doing.
Is there any intent in your motion that we are supplying assets and
No.
all to their day
No.
center?
It's just that we're working together. The group may say we're not doing that. The group may say we do that. The group may say whatever, but it just says that we're gonna be working together. This is not, I don't think it was to them tied to the day center. It was whether we gonna work together with them on a homeless initiative moving forward. They've already bought the property for the day center, they're gonna renovate it. They already did the design and everything without us, so, I mean, I'm not looking to do anything with them on that.
I just want to make sure that we don't, that it's not, because when it came back to us, the discussion was, are we gonna get in on this day center or not?
But that's not, but that's not my motion. I mean, mine, well, no, she asked that, the vice chair asked that, but then I think the mayor, came back and said whether we would collaborate with the city on the homelessness. I think that was a discussion within that, but that wasn't what ended up, and might have came across here, but I don't think that was, the way. But, so my motion is just to collaborate, not necessarily with the day center, because they got the day center. We move on with our shelter. I think Mr. Keith's right, ours probably will be done well before then.
Is it necessary that I'm struggling with? You said not necessarily the day center. I guess I'm looking for an absolute.
Well, I can't give you absolute, because the committee may say down the road, I mean, the absolutely is not to put any money into helping them build it or do any of that. But I do think that down the road, the group may say, hey, we might need to have somebody from DSS in this day center, or we may need that. But that's the collaboration through the homeless committee.
You know what, and I'm just saying this, at this point, I don't even think that we need to entertain a motion for that. I think that we need to continue to do what we're doing, and they continue to do what they're doing, and later on down the road, if we see that there's some collaboration that needs to be done after these buildings are almost through, or we're almost completed, then we come to the table and say that we're going to assist them in this effort, they're going to assist us with this. I think right now,
There's a motion on the table.
okay, so what?
I think Jeanette said it.
No, she didn't.
Yes, she did. She did, because we went to vote, and then we stopped. And it was, so, yes.
Okay, so,
I'm a little scared of support. I just, because I don't want them to, I don't want the committee to say, okay, well, you guys said you support it, and now we're separating our assets, and we're doing two homeless centers poorly, where we can do one.
No, one's a shelter, one's a day center.
Yeah.
But at some point, there has to be some conversation going down the road as to where we
I don't disagree with my fears, my fears have been for 30 years. They want to cut the ribbon and then give us the keys.
Well, and that's what, I think this prevents that. That's what I think this does.
okay, there's a motion on the floor, a second, all in favor.
Oh, you two over there? This is for the collaboration with the city. What you second?
I don't want to put this in.
Okay, Madam Manager.
What was the vote?
3-3.
That's it.
Who voted in option one, please?
Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. That brings us to our monthly reports. Unless you have any questions, we can move to the closed session.
Okay, are there any questions?
Yes.
Okay. There a motion to go into closed session?
Yes, sir. Let me read what they're for. We have attorney-client matters pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143, 318, 11A3, and personnel matters pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A6.
Okay. Now, is there a motion to go into closed session?
Motion to go to closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Mason.
Mason.
Got a new house.
It's looking pretty cool so far.
A place that I call home.
I'm teaching Louise how to cook some lasagna.
It only takes a spark to make a fire start.
Thank you.
Study, please.
I think I finally found a place to make my own. A place that I call home. This place that I call home.
I want all of the people who are my age to enjoy their golden years.
I mean, it just makes good sense to try to protect yourself.
I've got great-grandchildren out there I haven't seen, and I'm looking forward to that.
I'm asking my seniors and my young people to encourage my seniors and my young people to participate in this process.
What you do to keep yourself healthy helps keep your neighbor, your friends, your relatives, helps keep them healthy too.
I'm excited, relieved, and grateful. And taking the shot is what's best for all.
I encourage all of us to say, I'm not through. There are things I still have left to do, and I'm going to fight this head on. I'm going to get vaccinated.
I feel very much that this allows me to be more in control of my life, less fearful. Doesn't mean I won't wear a mask, I will.
If we take it seriously, we can be past the horrors of 2020.
If you have a spot, take your shot.
You have a spot?
Take your shot.
You have a special spot, so please take your shot.
You have a spot.
Take your shot.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it, so do your part and stay home. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit social gatherings. If you need essential items like food and medicine, try using a delivery service. If you must leave your house for essential items, or if you want to take a walk for exercise, make sure to wear a cloth face covering. Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. Try not to frequently touch surfaces like light signals, street signs, or benches. And wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus, so stay home unless absolutely necessary. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over. Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You total your car. You kill someone.
Hey, Jimbo, let's go take a ride in my new space truck.
Are you crazy? You can't drive. You're space drunk. What? Come on.
Hold it right there.
Captain Cosmic.
Don't you boys realize drinking and driving is a bad idea? Not only can you hurt yourself, but you could seriously injure someone else. I think you need to find a ride home because it's booze it and lose it.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner! Here we go.
Excellent.
Soccer is fun.
Yeah, I saw you guys out there.
We're the
What if we start to think about cancer differently, at the beginning? In this special issue of Pediatrics, we invite you to learn more about early life factors that contribute to a person's lifetime cancer risk, about opportunities for preventing cancer from the beginning, as early as the prenatal period, infancy, and throughout childhood. Let's talk about how we can consider cancer causes and prevention now, at the beginning of the lifespan, not only at the middle or the end. This issue will inform and engage pediatricians, policymakers, and families in discussions about cancer prevention.
This is an important message from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Has your home recently experienced flooding after a hurricane or other natural disaster? If you have a weakened immune system, you may be at risk for becoming seriously ill from mold. People with weakened immune systems include those who have had a transplant, are getting chemotherapy for cancer, or are taking medications that weaken the immune system. Don't enter buildings with mold damage if you have a weakened immune system or breathing problem like asthma. If you have a weakened immune system and need to clean mold in an indoor area, wear a properly fitted NIOSH-approved N95 mask or one that provides even more protection. Also wear gloves and goggles. You may see or smell mold on furniture, carpeting, or other items that have been wet for more than 24 hours. Assume mold is present, even if it's not visible. Completely dry everything. Clean up the mold, and repair any damage. Talk with your healthcare provider if you've recently been exposed to mold and have symptoms that aren't getting better with treatment. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/mold.
When the earth shakes, the ground moves, and things start to fall, you'll ask yourself, how prepared or unprepared are you? Have you removed objects from over the bed and over your head? Anchored your possessions securely to the wall. It won't be a pain, and you're not doing it in vain. Are your emergency kits packed? What about your family, your friends? Do they know what to do, how to get in touch, and where to meet? Do you know how to drop, cover, and hold on, covering your head and neck. What if you're outside? Or in a car? After the shaking stops, look around. Figure out what to do. Stay away from damaged areas. Turn on a radio. Reach out for help. And if you're trapped, do not move about. Stay calm. Only shout as a last resort. Once everything and everyone is safe, get prepared. An aftershock could be on its way. So before the earth shakes, the ground moves, and things start to fall, get prepared. Make a plan. Practice what you know, because an earthquake can happen anytime, anywhere. You never know.
A man was critically injured following a crash early Friday morning. Officers at the scene said the victim was driving a pickup truck when he lost control of the vehicle. The pickup veered left and went into a ditch. A front seat passenger was wearing a seatbelt and escaped the crash without injury. The driver was not wearing a seatbelt and was ejected from the truck. He died at the scene. Law enforcement writes tickets to save lives.
You'll never catch me, space fools! He's getting away!
Not so fast.
What are we waiting on?
You forgot to buckle your space seatbelt. And if you don't buckle up, you could face a fine up to $179.
Right.
Remember, friends, whether you're the passenger or the driver, it's click it or ticket.
Space Squad!
Operation Lifesaver reminds professional drivers, including cement, dump, and garbage truck drivers, to stay alert when crossing railroad tracks. Due to the weight of your vehicle, you should take extra precautions when approaching and crossing railroad tracks to avoid a devastating crash that could derail a train. However, with the proper rail safety education, you can stay safe and help others stay safe too. What actions should you take at a highway rail grade crossing? First of all, approach crossings with care. For those trucks required by law to stop at crossings because they're transporting hazardous materials, start by using four-way flashers and pull-out lanes if available. Turn off fans, radio, and other distractions. Watch and listen to your surroundings. Be sure to use mirrors to see around your truck. While stopped, look carefully in both directions for approaching trains before you cross. Make sure you can see around obstructions such as mirrors and windshield pillars. If your truck doesn't fit, don't commit. Be sure there is enough room on either side of the tracks for your entire vehicle. Trains overhang the tracks, so for safety, leave at least 15 feet between the rear of your vehicle and the nearest rail. Do not try to beat a train. Trains cannot stop quickly. Be patient and wait. Use the highest gear that allows you to cross the tracks without having to shift midway. If the red lights begin to flash after you start across the tracks, keep going and don't stop. As a professional driver, what signs and signals should you understand at crossings? An advance warning sign warns of a crossing ahead. A crossbuck sign instructs you to yield to a train. The painted stop line before the tracks indicates where to stop. A multi-track sign warns of more than one set of tracks at a crossing. When used, this sign is placed just below the crossbuck at a crossing, and it tells you the number of tracks to expect at that location. Flashing red light signals mean a train is approaching and you must stop. Gates and flashing red lights mean a train is approaching. Do not drive around them. A hump crossing sign means a low vehicle could get hung up on the tracks. A yellow diamond-shaped parallel track sign means there is a railroad crossing immediately after making a turn. Now, let's imagine your vehicle stalls or hangs up on the tracks. What then? Get out of your vehicle, even if you do not see a train. If a train is approaching, get out and run towards the train, but away from the tracks at a 45-degree angle to avoid debris from a collision. If there is no train approaching, get out. Locate the emergency notification system sign and call the phone number on the sign to report your problem. Stay safe and help others stay safe around tracks and trains when you use increased attention when crossing railroad tracks, recognize and obey signs and signals, and act appropriately in the event of a stalled, stuck, or hung up vehicle on the tracks. For more information, visit our website at www.oli.org. Note, local and state laws may be more restrictive than the reminders contained in this video.
The Vision Resource Center dedicated a new walking trail for the blind and visually impaired at the Center for the Blind on Cedar Creek Road. The event was held October 15th to coincide with National White Cane Awareness Day, a national observance that recognizes the independence and accomplishments of the blind. The trail is a quarter-mile-long loop of gravel on the center's 7-acre property. Executive Director Terry Thomas said the trail will improve the quality of life for blind people by offering a safe place for fitness and recreation.
Our blind and vision impaired people, they have been wanting a trail where they can walk for over 3 years. And this will allow them to help with the other things that they have going on in terms of their flexibility. A lot of them have diabetes. That's how they lost most of their sight. So they want to get their health and wellness going each and every day. So this will afford them the opportunity to come out and walk in a very safe place where they don't have to worry about no sidewalks. They don't have to worry about cars or traffic. They can come out and enjoy the outside and get their health and wellness on. And a lot of them have been excited and been waiting for this day.
In May 2019, the Vision Resource Center moved into the Cedar Creek property after the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners approved a lease agreement. The Vision Resource Center serves blind adults and children through a variety of services including healthy living programs, independent living classes, support groups, social activities, as well as youth programs and a summer camp for children.
There is a road laid out for me, leading down to
boxes everywhere. And this is going to be Addie's room.
I am blind, but I need not see.
I think you're really going to like it.
I know this road is there for me. There is a love waiting.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
Ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see. I know this love is there for me.
Nice and slow.
If
I got
I'm
this.
free, take me down to the river
Nice.
and wash me.
Okay. What do you think?
Hi, my name is Rafael Osuba. I'm the artistic director of the El Quijote Festival. I just want to share this with you. There's no way for you to know who has COVID-19 just by looking at them. Race, religion, your age, your gender, it doesn't matter. So, when you go out of the house, protect yourself. I know we all can't stay home, but we can do one simple thing. We can wear a mask. And that small thing can protect our families, our friends, and those that we care about, and then our community as well. A mask helps those in the community that are most vulnerable, those that have health issues, those suffering from diabetes like myself. So it's such a simple thing that we can do to show our love for our community and be responsible adults. When you wear a mask, it protects you, and it also protects those that are still home. So when you get home, they're not exposed to the virus. When you go home, wash your hands. Make sure your mask covers your nose, and your mouth. Okay? Don't wear it down here. That's not the right way to wear it. Keep your distance. Try to keep at least 6 feet apart from those in the community, those around you. So that way you are not exposed and that they're not exposed. These are our best weapons to fight this virus. And everyone needs to do their part in the community if we're going to get through this. It's very simple, folks. If you go out, wear a mask. We are really in this together. Stay strong, North Carolina, and get behind the mask. Put it on.
When the clouds form, the rain pours, and water is all around, you'll ask yourself, how prepared or unprepared are you? Did you raise your utilities, appliances and such? Install a sump pump, clean the drains, just in case it decides to rain. Do you know your risks? Have you checked the local plans? You should cover your property with a flood insurance policy. Is your emergency supply kit packed? Is your family prepared? Did they know what to do, where to go, and how to stay safe? Because when the water starts to rise, you must act quickly and be wise. Turn on your radio, listen for updates, and if authorities tell you to go, hurry up and do so. Get to safe ground, go as high as you can, do what you need to do, but don't put yourself in harm's way. Just inches of water can sweep you away. Once the water is gone, move carefully. Be on the lookout for dangers you can't see, animals, debris, and electricity. Do not go home until you hear the all clear. Now when you get home, be aware. Not everything is as safe as it may appear. So before the clouds form, the rain pours, and water is all around, get prepared. Make a plan and keep yourself dry. Get started today. Go to ready.gov/prepare.
When you're on the road, safety is always priority one. In the U.S. alone, tens of millions of vehicle and equipment recalls occur every year. We know because here at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, we call it NHTSA, we set and enforce vehicle safety standards. And when vehicles and equipment have safety defects, we manage the recalls. Now we can quickly notify you when a recall is issued, so you'll immediately know what to do and how to get the recall fixed for free. NHTSA's new Safer Car app for Android and iOS keeps you informed with critical recall information about your specific vehicle and related equipment directly from the official source. The Safer Car app setup is easy. In 3 quick steps, you can set it and forget it. After downloading the app, simply scan or enter your vehicle identification number, known as the VIN, to put your vehicle into your virtual garage. Add as many vehicles as you like. Enter any additional related equipment you'd like to know about, like tires, car seats, or trailers. Then opt in for notifications and you're good to go. When Safer Car app discovers a recall for the vehicle or equipment you entered, it will send you an alert. While the Safer Car app downloads all relevant recall-related information you'll need from NHTSA and your vehicle's manufacturer, none of your user data is stored at NHTSA. Your privacy matters to us, so your personal information stays only on your device. Essential recall information empowers you to keep you and your passengers safe. Get it right from the source as soon as it's available with the all-new Safer Car app, only from NHTSA. At NHTSA, the voice of highway traffic safety, keeping people safe is what we do. Download the Safer Car app for iOS or Android today.
Chances. No shot is worth it. Go for Rachel.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. If you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes. Yeah, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes. Yeah, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Deciding when to wear a mask isn't about who you know or how well you know them. Just ask yourself, will I be with anyone I don't live with? If the answer is yes, get behind the mask. Help slow the spread of COVID-19. Get behind the mask. Learn more at covid19.ncdhhs.gov.
FEMA is working with communities across the country to be ready for snow and severe winter weather by monitoring for those weather hazards and also developing plans should there have to be a response.
In your home, have the necessary supplies for you, family members, and pets, food, water, medication, important papers.
Also understand that winter storms bring them with them unique challenges. Those could be extended power outages, maybe disrupted communications. So it's important that we consider that as we look at emergency supplies and prepare those for the coming months. That includes our devices themselves are charged if we get indications of an incoming winter storm. We're all connected uniquely now through these devices. That could be our cell phone, our laptops, our tablets. And it's important that we maintain that social connection during this time, particularly because of the challenge of this pandemic.
So living in these pandemic conditions is very important not to lose our guard. Important for families to stay home and in their home protected. But also think about as you travel outside of your home. Remember to take your mask, hand sanitizers. Important for families to also have a car preparedness kit that includes things like food and water, an extra change of clothing should you find yourself in a winter storm condition outside of your home.
We're actively engaging during this current COVID-19 pandemic with our public health partners, both at the Health and Human Services Department, as well as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We're working with them to make sure our state and local partners and those on the front lines of this pandemic have the personal protective equipment that they need, that we are able to expand testing to meet the public's requirements.
Make a plan, have a kit for your home and your car, download the FEMA app, and visit ready.gov for more preparedness information.
Saving lives and preventing injuries on our nation's roads, that's what we do here at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I'm James Owens, Deputy Administrator of NHTSA. We've made tremendous progress over the last 50 years. Traffic deaths have dropped from more than 52,000 lives lost in 1970 to about 36,000 in 2019. But there are a lot more people in America today than back then. So this change comes as
I just blew, so I say it's 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. It's always been a little awkward anyway. All in favor?
If you have any suggestions about the meeting,